All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out BetLife. BetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and BetLife is there to ease that transition. To reach out to VetLife, you may do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I'm sitting here today with Greg Modd, a jiu-jitsu father in the community. He's got 2 kids in the school here, and a gentleman that him and I just had about 30 minutes of dialogue before the podcast even began. He's a guy that is, he closely follows Jocko, follows jiu-jitsu, follows motivational things in life, always brings a killer energy into the building. I knew I wanted to do this podcast today because you're one of the only people that, regardless of how your life is going outside of this gym, I can't tell. Almost every day when you show up and I go, hey, Greg, how are you? You always respond.
Blessed in abundance.
Blessed in abundance. And at first, I remembered being shocked by the answer. And I was like, ooh, I like that. And I like it because it shows discipline. You didn't say it once, but every time you've been asked, you respond that way. And that type of discipline, to me, instantly shows someone capable of keeping other routines that yield success. So that's something I went, you know what, that's good stuff right there. So for the people that don't know you, Greg, let's just really briefly go through your story. Were you born and raised here in Michigan? What were you like as a kid? What sports were you into? And then we'll fast forward to, what do you do now as a career? And then we'll just get into some modern conversation and topics.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast. It's an honor and privilege to be here. A huge fan. You're a pillar of the community. You do wonderful things for my children and others, so I'm grateful for everything you've done, specifically opening up the gym in the face of the coronavirus. And when May 1st came around 2020 and we were supposed to 2 weeks to flatten the curve, you were still open and you were on Fox News getting after it. And I was like, I have to be a part of this, and I've just excited to be here. A little bit about me, first and foremost, I'm a disciple of Christ. I am Rachel's husband and the father of Zeke, DM, Ruby, and Eden, and I am blessed in abundance because God has been so good to me. And if you want to have an attitude of gratitude, that's the fastest way to happiness. So when I wake up in the morning, I think I got a really comfy bed under my butt. I got a roof over my head. I have great food in the fridge. I have healthy children in the room next to me, and I have the love of my life next to me as well. So how can I not think about all the great things I have and not, walk around saying I'm blessed in abundance? God has humbled me and God has blessed me.
Did you grow up in a really religious family, so you found religion at an early age, or is this something that you found during your life story?
So I grew up in a trailer park in West Michigan. I was born in Muskegon and Hackley Hospital, went to Fruitport High School, grew up in Spring Lake, and spent my summers on Grand Haven Beach. And there was a lot of fist fights in the trailer park. Why? I have no idea. Rick Pape was a friend of mine, and we would just get in fist fights and karate for no reason at all that I recall, but a lot of fights. And Rick actually was the one who brought me to church often with his family, and probably about around the age of 8 years old, I gave my life to Jesus. Now, was I an honorable disciple of Christ? No, not at all. Many, many years I have, had been a deplorable sinner who's done terrible things that you'd look and say, oh, this guy's raising the flag and talking about Jesus. Well, if that's what a Christian is, then, not me. But yeah, no, I grew up in West Michigan, loving family. My dad's, they did the best that they could with what they had. There's a Christian comedian named Michael Jr. who talks about how he loves cutting his son's hair. And he talks about how his father would cut his hair and yell at him. And he said, but I have to consider what he went through when his father cut his hair, because his dad would hit him with the clippers and scream at him. And he said, I didn't get hit by my dad with the clippers. I just got yelled at. And he says, but now I can, cut my kid's hair and have fun. So considering my parents' experience, they did the best that they could with what they had, and they loved me in abundance, and they still do today, and I love them dearly. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, you cover something that's so important, is realizing that cycles can be broken, because there's a lot of people that whatever their parents were is what they are. It's and it is sad to see someone that grew up with an alcoholic father that was abusive, that treated their mother terribly, and then shockingly, a lot of the times they will grow up and turn to alcohol or turn to other vices and become that same angry person that then lashes out at the people around them. And what it is a lot of the times the traumas and the things that people have been through are the things that are, not making them wake up with gratitude, going, you know what, this life is amazing and I can make some incredible things out of this. All of that negative energy inside hurts the people around them, which then they raise children that are growing up in an environment of hurt, which then they hurt the people around them. But people need to remember, you can break that cycle. Just because you were born into that energy does not mean you need to live in that energy at all. So you came up in a home where you had very loving parents, but like you said, you grew up in the trailer park, which Spencer, actually, he's one of my favorite fighters on this team, Spencer Filarski. That kid has so much grit, so much fight to him, and he grew up in a trailer park. And he told me the identical thing. He's like, man, they just fight all the time. And I think it makes perfect sense. I feel like if you're growing up in a really big home and you got a comfortable bed and you're getting served great food every day and your family has money, where's that fire to fight? You know what I mean? I bet you a lot of people that grow up in rich families where everything is catered to them, everything is super easy. I don't think you're going to have that same inner flame unless you were just truly born with it and you had that innate fire from birth. But someone that grew up in an area where around you is much more struggle. There's people dealing with a lot more. There's a lot more chaos. It's going to give you a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. And Spencer will never watch this podcast episode, but I tell you what, this kid's going to be in the UFC if he puts his mind to it, because he has this endless fight to him. And as I have peeled back layers of Spencer, because at first he wouldn't really talk about it at all, and he grew up in a trailer park and he had a really bad environment, hasn't known his father his entire life. Father left when he was young, and he carries a lot of things, and he's been beaten up so many times and humiliated. But it's given this kid is out on the mats, he is unbreakable. It doesn't matter what you do to him or how bad you beat his ass. If he is conscious, he is going to fight back at you. And so it created a very powerful person. But then, not to get off your story, but really quickly, Spencer was saying to me at first, he's been looking at me as a mentor and a leader, and he's been coming to me, asking me a ton of questions. I helped him get a job. I'm helping him get rolling. And he's like, man, how do I get my trailer? And I'm like, Spencer, you're not getting a trailer. What are you talking about? And he's like, well, no, I want to kind of I need to get out of my mom, but I need to get my trailer. And I'm like, no, why are you thinking you need to get your, we can start with an apartment. Maybe we find that. Or you need to work towards getting your home. You're going to own a home, Spencer. And honestly, I could see in his eyes, he had never considered the idea that wait, I could have a really nice house and live somewhere better than this and not have to have my children grow up in an environment like this. And he literally almost questioned me on it. No, man, I don't really have any skills. I didn't do good in school. And I'm like, dude, you're a human being. Break that cycle. Don't look at yourself as someone that belongs in a trailer park. Look at yourself as you know what? I learned great lessons from there. I pulled a lot of good stuff from there. I developed a resiliency and perseverance. But now I'm going to develop abundance. I'm going to develop gratitude. I'm going to change my future. And so a lot of the times I think what most people would define as bad times growing up or difficult times are the defining factors for the success that comes later. And before you move to a further topic, I want to talk about how do you stay in that gratitude state and what caused that switch? Because you said, you're I was kind of a sinner early on. I was doing a bunch of things I wasn't proud of, and a lot of times people do enough things that they beat down their self-image so bad, oh, I'm a disappointment, or look at all these people I've hurt, or look at these things that I've done that I'm not proud of. And then they never kind of realize that dude, you can make mistakes and then you can learn from those mistakes. And if the person you are today would look back and go, man, I would never do that to people again, then be thankful for those mistakes because now you're who you should have been, right? What made you go from that to going, I'm going to break the cycle. I'm not going to be the guy that whacks my son over the head when I'm cutting his hair with the clippers. I'm going to be a positive role model and a powerful figure for my children so that they can have more abundance in their life. What caused the switch? And then what things do you do that, like I said, for the people listening, I'm not exaggerating. Every day I have ever asked this man, how are you, Greg? He says, blessed in abundance. It's inspiring. So talk about those two things.
Well, my best friend also grew up in a trailer park, and he's a physician today, and he always says when we hang out, you know, like, you can take the kid out of the trailer park, but you can't take the trailer park out of the kid, which is the grit and the resiliency and the get after it mindset. What happened to me, essentially, that was the switch, was 2017. I was getting my MBA from the University of Michigan Ross School of Business, and I was making some waves. I brought my culture to U of M instead of accepting their culture, which by January 2018 had ruffled many, many feathers, many feathers. So I kind of found myself in this position of looking at my New Year's resolutions, which was to put God first. And when you ask God to show up, he does. And so, like, I talked about how, you know, I'd run around flying my Jesus flag, but then at night, you know, getting ridiculously drunk and saying sexually inappropriate things and just absolutely, you know, abhorrent type behavior. It was illuminated to me, and it humbled me, and it hurt me. And I was...
So wait. It just happened. Like, you were just sitting down one day, and all of a sudden you were like, there's a huge disconnect in what I say versus who I am. Like, that, there was no actual event. Like, no one broke your heart or no girl. Like, nothing happened that was big enough that you were like, whoa, I need to take a step back. You just one day were like, oh, hey, wait, I'm not being who I say I am, and now I am.
Well, so there's the Dr. Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing. So I was who I am, you know, going to church, going to Bible studies, men's groups, you know, in the Word. But then, you know, I kind of took the attitude of, oh, I'm in college again. I'm an undergrad. Like, I didn't have this opportunity because I was in the United States Air Force. So I took a 20-year-old mentality into an executive MBA program, which didn't align well. So people were kind of like, what is this guy talking about? Why is he saying this? This is wildly inappropriate. Knock it off. So it was, I, you know, got in some trouble at the school. I had 3 options, and, you know,
So you did hit a point where you had gotten in some trouble, and there was like paths in front of you, and
Right.
you were going to have to take one of these paths. You couldn't go on in your current thing. That makes more sense. I was picturing at one point you just woke up in the morning and said, yeah, you know what, there's a big disconnect here and I'm going to fix it. You were in trouble and you had to pick. Am I going to be the man that I know I should be, or am I going to continue this behavior?
Yeah, so my New Year's resolution was to put God first, and when you ask God to show up, he does. And what he did was illuminate the areas in my life that needed some cinching up and some illumination. So many of the people within the program told me, like, we told you to knock it off. We asked you repeatedly. I never heard that, not once. And eventually, you know, I get this thing from Oscar, the Office of Student Conflict Resolution, and I was just blown away. And there's just, you know, 70 plus pages of complaints, you know, multiple people. And I end up in the dean's office, and he says, you got 3 options: take a lap, which was a year off, fight it and lose, or leave and we'll give you your money back. And me, in the good old fight or flight situation, I'm always going to dig in my heels and fight. And so I called Amanda Ritchie, who I think very highly of. Initially, when I met her, we weren't, you know, aligned 100%. We ended up being on the team together on my first EMBA team. But she told me, she said, Greg, why do you want to fight this? And I was like, 'cause screw them, that's why. Because, you know, you want to come after me? Come after me, because they got the trailer park mentality. I got the grit. You know, you can't take me down. You're never going to beat me. You might knock me out, but I will get right back up and keep coming after you until I win. And she was like, Greg, this is business school. Business is about relationships. More importantly, positive relationships. Don't do that. And it just was like, wow, she's 100% right. Because everybody who got a call gave their statement, gave their testimony, and, you know, this is who Greg is, and this is how Greg has been, and this is what he said, this is what he's done. But not Amanda. Amanda did not. She said, if I have a problem with Greg, I'll speak to Greg directly. And so she called me up and called me out and told me some of the things that I did while I was blackout drunk that, you know, I damaged so many relationships. I was looking to move into Tampa, Florida, because I read a VFW article that said the worst place for veterans to live is Metro Detroit. The best city to live in is Tampa. So I was like, all right, worst to first, that's what we're going to do. So I knew a guy in Tampa, and I kept calling him and sending him messages and emails and just no response. And I told him, I said, I'm going to call you every day until you finally respond to me. And eventually he responded, and he's like, why am I so important in your life? And I was like, well, you're in Tampa, you have a network, I'm looking to move there, I need your assistance. And he was like, wow, Because the last time you and I interacted, you basically humiliated me. It was a public undressing, and you insulted me for like an hour straight, and you made me feel less than. And he said, hey, look, John, like, I sincerely apologize. I was most likely blackout drunk, and I apologize profusely for that, and I hope you can forgive me. And he was like, absolutely, you're forgiven. And I was like, thank you. He's like, so how can I help? And that was it. And how many people that's happened to in my lifetime, I don't know. But I'm sure that there's a good, like Dr. Seth Hickerson, who was on here, like listening to his story, it was similar to mine. Like on a Venn diagram, there's not 100% overlap, but a lot of the things that he was saying I could completely relate to. And I kind of went through some different type of, waking up early, reading the Bible, journaling, writing, whatever the scripture was that was illuminated to me, I'd write that down. And what does it mean to me? Is it the Holy Spirit convicting me to start something, stop something, or a promise from God to be leaned into? And then write a prayer. The prayer can be related to the scripture or not. And then just kind of pushing in and leaning into those types of disciplines helped me to find out how blessed I was. And so I have these journals. Shout out to Jerry Carlson, who did a discipleship with me. He worked at Microsoft at the time and been there for over 20 years, just retired. And he was the one that helped train me to do this. And we went through a lot of things. And he entered my life at that time of chaos. And I was just, he asked me, he says, what's going on? I can see something's wrong. And I was like, I don't trust you. So I don't really trust many people. I've been hurt enough to know, like, you can't trust people. So, but Jerry stuck around, and he was consistent, and he showed me a lot of good habits and helped me to, grow closer to my Heavenly Father. And ultimately, I can look back and read prayers and say, yep, answered prayer. Yep, answered prayer. And it's, you got to be specific with your prayers and ask your prayers. And I was very specific with my prayers, and God answered them all. So I ended up, submitting, taking that year off. And launched my business throughout that year, and it was great. It all worked out. There's a song by Elevation Worship that talks about you take what the enemy meant for evil and turn it for good. And that could have been a detrimental. I could have leaned into alcohol and drugs and thrown my life away, but instead that was a wake-up call for me where I was like, okay, God loves me. I trust him, and I leaned in, and I just throttled out on God and just went all the way in and dove into scripture. And by the grace and mercy of Jesus, I'm blessed in abundance today because of it. So there's I think it's A.W. Towser says something along the lines of, it's highly doubtful God can actually bless a man until he's hurt him deeply, or something to that effect. And I was hurt deeply. Like, everything was taken away from me. I was an HR executive. I, had so many, my identity was in my job. My identity is the things that I did. Now my identity is in Christ, and that can't be taken away from me. My identity is, a husband, and I am so blessed to have my wife. My wife is an absolute saint. Last night she told me, she said, what am I going to do when all the kids are gone? I'm just going to end up, putting the blanket in the dryer 12 times a day and handing it to you and just caring for you. And I'm like, bring on the future. So,
did you meet your wife during this period or after you had already gone through your change?
So we got married in 2009. She knew me in high school, but I didn't know her. I was kind of a loudmouth kid, played football. We went to the state championship, ran into Drew Stanton in the Farmington Hills Harrison, whatever, Falcons or whatever they are. And they won their 5th championship, and that was our first time in school history going there. But she went to Fruitport as well for a little bit, and she knew me, but I didn't know her. And I was the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz. And her sister was a munchkin. I think she was in 4th grade or whatever, so we had all the elementary kids in the high school play, and she'd come to play practice, and she'd see me and watch me from a distance, think, oh, that dude is gorgeous. He's so handsome. But she never spoke to me because I was a loudmouth, I was arrogant, and, many other undesirable traits. And she actually told one of the bridesmaids that, I feel sorry for whoever marries that guy. He's such a jackass. And she ended up being my wife. So praise God for that. And she's been such a great helper, and she's so supportive. And she's been through the ringer with me. I've made multiple mistakes, but she's always been faithful to me, and she's always built me up. My mom says that Rachel babies me too much, but she cares for me. She is there, and she doesn't beat me down. She builds me up, and because of her support and everything that she's done for me, I strive to be worthy to be with her because she is phenomenal and I'm blessed with her. And she sent me some pictures last night, some selfies like, hey, like, here's your 37-year-old wife and, it's downhill from here. And I was just like, no, you're totally wrong. You're absolutely beautiful. I love you so much. And I look forward to spending the next 37 plus years of my life with you because she's just, I can't say enough good things about her. She's just always there. So yeah, she was there with me through it all, and she supported me. She actually got angry, which she generally doesn't. She was like, she wanted to go burn down the city, and I was like, no, back up. I was like, I am wrong here. I have committed egregious violations. I have egregiously violated Ephesians 5:4, which was illuminated to me by a brother in Christ who was actually on my team, who was like, hey man, you should read Ephesians 5 like 2. And so when you read scripture, you usually read a couple before and a couple after, and I stumbled upon Ephesians 5:4 that talks about there should be no coarse talk or inappropriate joking, rather only thanksgiving. And I was like, oh, here's another illumination of things I shouldn't be doing. So
would you say that, because I've met a lot of people that are big into religion, would you say that you take them as the book as a literal thing, or do you take it as like a guide through which you pull meaning from the words and then apply that to your modern life? Or the Bible to you, is it like an actual literal event? And I'm just trying to understand, do you pull meaning from it, or do the words literally as they're written mean what they're written? Because I'm someone that's never read the Bible. I've looked into Christianity and Catholicism and Buddhism and kind of got a feel for what everybody believes, but I don't know, when you take inspiration and you pick up the book and you read it, are you using it literally, or are you making it fit to your story?
Well, I would push back on what you said there. I wouldn't consider myself religious at all. I'm about relationship. So I have a relationship with my Heavenly Father, and He's there for me like a good father. He is, there to discipline me when I do bad things, and He's there to bless me when I continue to be an honorable disciple of Christ, which is my number one goal in life, is to...
Got it. So it's just like a relationship. It's like you're held to a standard by your Heavenly Father.
What Jerry had taught me was to read the Bible like a love letter, personally to you. So when you read the Bible, it's a love letter, man. It's God who is speaking to you saying, hey, here's some traps that you should avoid. And if you don't, like we spoke about on the drive from the airport, how, some drugs and alcohol and poor decisions in life can ruin your life. Well, it talks about that in the Bible, like being drunken, be a drunkard. Like it's like you can drink some wine, have a couple drinks, fine. But if you're taking it to the extreme,
that's what I mean. It's just basically like a guide to help you go through this life in your best form, so that you're able to get the best experience out of this.
Right. So I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and one of the things that you had said previously was, we don't really care what you believe in, whether it's, a purple elephant in the sky or whatever. If it makes you be a better person, then I'm all for it. And sanctification process is a lifetime process. No one will ever be perfect. And one of the things that we talked about in the Bible study is that we all start out and we're like this as sinners. And as we go through life, we slowly start shedding some, but will always be a thorn on our side. There will always be something there to humble us, to keep us dependent on God, because nothing great has ever been accomplished alone. And, I can't accomplish anything by myself, especially without my wife. But with my Heavenly Father, all things are possible. Philippians 4:13 talks about all things are possible through Him. And the key is to be through Him. So glory to God, not glory to Greg. And that's another thing, too, Jerry taught me, was something like, when you're making a decision, well, actually it was Charlie Copeman who taught me this one, but when you're making a decision, first check with God. Like whenever you're making a big decision, check with God, like through prayer. Check His Word. What does the Bible say about this? Check your heart. Am I doing this for the glory of Greg, or am I doing this for the glory of God? Check the facts and check with wise counsel, and those who are in the know. And that's how you should make a good decision. So I've been fortunate enough and blessed with so many people that love me in abundance that I don't deserve and haven't earned, but care enough about me as a human being, my wife and my children, to try to guide me, because I'm stubborn and I'm stupid, and but I've been fortunate and blessed with people in my life that care enough to pour into me and to give knowledge to me to say, hey, this is a good path. So
And I think your story shows so much for people that are struggling or people that are making mistakes or people that are not proud of the people that they are, that like, man, there's a recovery on the other side of it. There's a completely different existence out there in the future. And the actions that you take and the people that you surround yourself with are putting you on a course. And it's either the course continuing to the pitfalls and all the problems that you just spoke about, or there's the other side of it where you find discipline, you find love, you find forgiveness, you find acceptance, you find all these things that improve the quality of your life. So I feel like a lot of the times people that have made so many mistakes, they almost write themselves off. You know what I mean? And you're sitting here being like, listen, I made like all the mistakes. And I love the fact that you said like I could have dug in and fought back and been like, nuh-uh. Like but at some point you took responsibility, because personal responsibility is a very powerful thing. And you're like, you know what? Maybe it's me. Like the common denominator finally hit you, like, maybe it's me.
It is me.
And at that point, now all of a sudden your life starts to change dramatically, because it's like you flip the lens. Instead of like you're always looking outward, finding out like, well, this happened because of this or this. You flip the lens and you were like, wait a second. What if Greg is causing Greg's problems? And then by changing that, now all of a sudden you have this beautiful life on the other side. You have your wife, you have your family, where if you had never got off that course, who knows what your life would look like at this point. You could be abandoned by most people. You might not have any quality or loving relationships. So it's like people that are in chaos or in the struggle, they need to remember that like that doesn't have to exist forever, but it starts with you. Like you got to look deep into yourself and be like, is this what I want? Is this who I am? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And
yeah, like I talked about with my wife before I came out here. I said, we're going to talk about 3 things today. We're going to talk about Jesus, Jocko, and jiu-jitsu. And, Jocko, get a go, discipline go. Travis Mills is my favorite one here. You got the Afterburner Orange. It's all about discipline. And Jocko talks about how whatever the problem is, it's your fault. You're the problem. Oh, so you don't have a budget? Well, that's your fault. Why? Because you weren't able to influence the decision makers. So everything within your sphere of influence is your fault, whether it's good or bad. And whatever the outcome is, good. Didn't get the promotion? Good. More time to train. Got injured? Good. Needed to relax anyways. So there's a video out there by Jocko that I'm sure you've seen.
100%. Well, I mean, and there's something very empowering about saying, you know what, it's my fault. Mm-hmm. And it's something that most people don't want to accept. They don't want to accept that responsibility, especially now, like our culture in general, and not that I want to go into this, is like very soft. And if someone's coming to you and like, well, the reason I'm not successful is because of this, and you're just like, no, it's you. You suck right now and you need to get better. Like that is just so powerful and so forward. And from a man like Jocko, of course, that's what he'd tell you. Oh, your life's falling to pieces and you have no money to feed your family? Good. Mm-hmm. Level up. Find the resources you need. Get up earlier. Work till you find it. These are truths in my mind, because I see that as like, I've seen what taking personal responsibility does. But it's like you have to be willing to accept that, because it is so much easier. And human beings, I don't care who it is, the natural state is they want the path of least resistance. Now, you can develop discipline and character and grit and like go for the challenges, but overall human beings are like, fight or flight is uncomfortable. Cozy bed and not having to get out of my pajamas is super comfortable. I want to take this route. But when you start going, no, I kind of suck right now and I need to level up, and my future is going to be a direct reflection of the actions that I'm taking now. It's liberating. It's empowering. It's like one of the biggest assets I've had in my entire life, somewhere around my early 20s, actually, as I was digging into different religions, and I looked through Christianity and Catholicism and Buddhism. There was something that hit me very hard about Buddhism, with the idea that like you're in control of nothing. And it was weird. Like when I started really getting into that ideology, it was the most empowering thing ever. Because like I lost my mother to suicide. I lost a relationship of almost 3 years to a suicide. My parents moved me across the country, a long distance relationship we tried to make as young kids that thought we were going to marry each other and fall in love. And she took her own life during the Depression and like I remember like this being in the state of like, why me? Like the victim mentality tried to take root. You know what I mean? Like, why the hell is this happening to me? And then you try to look for people to blame. And for a long time, it was my stepmother. Like, yeah, man, I doubt she'll ever watch this podcast. We have a better relationship now. But like, I was like, this woman, first of all, like my dad cheated on my mother kills herself. Then this woman was like, my family lives in Michigan. We're going to move to Michigan. My entire life, my entire existence was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My friends, my family, the girlfriend that I was with, and I had already had a lot of like pain and stuff from not having my mom. Like I always remember as a kid, like I just wanted to be able to talk to my mom just like one time. And then I pour all my heart into this woman because you're in a young relationship. We're like, hey, we're going to do this thing together. She had come from a lot of pain. I had come from a lot of pain, but we're like, united. Mm-hmm. We're going to fucking conquer this life. And then my stepmom was like, no, we're moving to Michigan because that's where my family is. And if your father doesn't go with me, then I'll leave him. And like, so we came out here. So the amount of resentment and anger, especially when Michelle took her life, like I remember as a kid being like, I have never hated, nor could I hate something more than I hate this person. And at some point in my life, in my early 20s, when I was really trying to figure my shit out, I don't really necessarily think that I was like going around actively hurting people, because I don't carry a lot of like weight of like, man, my bad decision. But I was definitely living so far below my capabilities. And something hit me about the idea that like, man, you are not in control of the relationship that your father developed that leads you to being taken here. You're not in control of this. You're not in control. Like you could be married to your wife, the best father in the world, the best husband in the world, your wife could still leave you. That's a different human being. And to most people, that's a terrifying thought. Like, what? But oh my God, I need, like, because people want control. You want to control your environment. You want to be, you don't want pain and suffering to come to you. I hit the opposite. I hit a rock bottom where, to be honest, I was extremely close to being suicidal myself. I didn't see purpose. But when I hit this rock bottom, and I also found this idea that like, man, like these things are external. James Gray, no matter how bad I want to, cannot influence these events. Like I can be the best me possible, but like however life expresses itself to me at that point is the life that I'm going to get. I could be the best husband in the world to a woman, and if she decided I love someone else, she's going to be with that person. And like that's not even that, you shouldn't be angry at them if that is life. So I found this freeing concept of like, I'm not in control of anything. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take all of that energy that most people try to spend controlling their environments. I'm just going to pour it into me. And I'm going to take that energy and I'm going to become the absolute best version of myself, because if I do so, I'm going to get the best results that I can produce. You know what I mean? Because my aura, my energy, my radiance into the universe, people will look at the best version that I can create. And then if they see value in me because of the man that I'm being, they're more likely to be around. They're more likely to develop relationships with me. They're more likely to be like, you know what? I would let this kid be a mentor with one of my kids. You know what I mean? I would let this man lead me into battle for all my fighters. I would let this guy, help me achieve my goals. But that's all with me taking personal responsibility and looking in the mirror every day and being like, yo, it's on you. You know what I mean? And if bad shit happens, don't point your finger outward. You know what I mean? And that was a huge shift in my life. But I also think the second that clicked for me, it was the same energy needed to like, why can't you start your own business? Because the old mentality would have said, you don't know anything about business. You didn't go to business school. You need someone to help you. You need to find someone to help you. And instead I was just like, nope. It's on you. And you know what the great thing is? You can do it. So it's like we both went through this transformation process. And most people that I've found that are successful or that carry a lot of discipline in their lives always have a story in the background where they struggled, or they had difficulty, or they had trauma, because then something causes this point where you're either going to just, that's your path for life, or you're going to go like, doop, that's not me anymore, And so I'm always fascinated by people that carry a lot of discipline, and I want to have these conversations because I think if more people that were struggling realize that like that is a common denominator among successful people, they might look at their story and go, wait, why can't I yield that successful product in the end? Why can't this algorithm work itself out to a positive result that I go like, hey, maybe all of these lessons and all of these moments were the exact thing I needed to become the person that I'm meant to be. So I want to talk a little bit, because like even the shirt you're wearing today, discipline equals freedom, right? What are the things that you've done since you've made that shift in your life that has allowed you to maintain that discipline and probably level up substantially even since that point? Like that's one thing I always laugh about with myself when I look back, what I thought my maximum capability was even 5 years ago. Like, oh, I'm really giving 100%. Like, I'm crushing it. I laugh at that now. I look back and I'm going, you were doing 20% of what you were capable of. So it's like it continues to reward you. But what are the things that you do in this society that is trying to control your outrage, trying to get, Greg, pay attention over here, be angry about this. These evil people are out to get you. How do you keep this focus, this discipline, the positive energy that you radiate? What are your systems for that so that other people that are searching for discipline in their lives can use that as a guide?
Well, I appreciate the question and look forward to answering it, but I want to say sincere condolences for your loss. I love you, and I know Jesus loves you too. And you said a lot there that gave me a lot of thoughts through my mind, specifically about like how one day your wife would just wake up and leave you. And let me tell you a lesson that I learned many moons ago down here at the Home Depot. So I'm standing there in the Home Depot with my beautiful wife, just, doing a little shopping, nice little Saturday with the kids. And this guy walks by, and he is looking at my wife in a manner where, he's looking. And generally, when a man looks at another man's wife, he quickly recognizes that he's staring at her in a fashion to where it's like, oh, look at James. Oh, hey, congratulations. And you look away. This guy didn't care at all. He didn't even really recognize and I was just staring at him like, bro, I'm right here. Like, what are you doing? And so the lesson that I took away from that was, if you don't pursue your wife every day, the guy at Home Depot will. And that's just the facts. That's the truth. So I try to pursue my wife every day.
And I didn't mean it that, man. I mean that, like, even if you're pursuing your wife every single day and you're on top of it and you're being the best Greg possible and da-da-da, there's still a reality where you do not have the control whether she chooses to be you. That's her as a human being.
Right.
And, like, to most people, that's terrifying. To me, like, I've detached from that. There's just, like, if I can honestly sleep at night knowing that, like, hey, you're giving your best. And when you mess up, you have to be honest about it. You have to try to level up. You have to improve. Like, whatever happens, you're going to handle it and you're going to move through it and you're going to be your best. Versus if, let's say, I was like super jealous or controlling or trying to be like, oh, my wife's not allowed to go home to Home Depot now because last time there was this hungry wolf out there that was staring at my wife. You know what I mean? So I need to keep her. That version of James is worse for her. Mm-hmm. Right? And then I would be a worse husband. I would be a worse man in her life that's trying to control her more. Why? Because of my fears. My fears would say, there's a guy at Home Depot that was looking at you, so now you can't go to Home Depot. Versus being like, no, I need to know who I am and what I bring to the table and make that valuable enough that when that dude at Home Depot stares at her, she goes, what are you doing, creep?
She didn't even notice. I would push back on that and go back to the Jocko taking extreme ownership. If my wife leaves me, it's my fault. It's because I haven't poured enough into the well.
What if you poured everything into the well, Greg?
I should have done more. There was an area of opportunity for improvement. Because if I would have done everything, I would have filled up her love tank.
What if you had dated someone that for whatever reason, no matter what you did, part of her psychology wanted to go date a billionaire or a guy rolled up in Lamborghini? That is.
Are we talking date or marriage? Because there's a significant difference.
She wants to leave you because like that Jocko thing. I would argue Jocko on that. I would 100% argue that like you can give 100% and want to be like, well, I should have done. But at a certain point, you need to also realize there's the reality exists that you could have done everything and really tried your best and poured. But some person could have just offered her something different. It could have been, the Prince of Saudi Arabia came over and he has certain things that you never had. And certain part of your wife's psychology was like, I always want to be an Arabian princess. There is a future where it's not your fault, but you were given your best. You know what I mean? And like you don't have the control over that dynamic.
You know what I love about America is that we can have this conversation, and I am totally okay with hearing your point of view and agreeing to disagree because you have the right to be wrong. You do. You absolutely do.
As well. But no, 100%. I mean, I know what you're saying, but like there's this idea that like, well, I should have done more. What if you didn't know that you just weren't dating the person that you thought you were? Or what if your significant other had a midlife crisis or a mental breakdown or like, you don't know. There's so many things that can take place that leads them. Like right now, you two are running as parallel adult human beings. But there are things that can take someone off the course. Even if you were right there and you're supportive and you're doing all your things, it can happen. You know what I mean? And like, now that fear is probably firing on your brain on all cylinders. Like, no, I should have done more. I should have been able to do this. But there might not have been an answer. There might not have been, let's take you out of it. Joe and Betty. Joe may have tried to pour 100%, and he was a great father, and he worked extra hours when she wanted more money, and then she wanted more love. So when he came home, he made sure he gave her the time. Betty might still decide that, Joe, you're just not the one. The way that your, facial structure is, I saw this other facial structure and I like that more, or this person's bank account, it could happen where Joe gave his 100, but Betty went a different direction.
Adapt, overcome, and persevere.
Exactly. And you know what you do? You would be fine. You would level back up. You would reflect on the event. You would learn from the bad time or any of the difficult, just like you did with the younger part of your story in your life. And the next woman that came around, you'd probably give even more than you. It'd be even more 100% of yourself. You know what I mean? So I don't I just don't like the idea of telling someone that, if a relationship fell apart, it's your fault. You should have done more, because it may not have been.
Well, I lost a client recently for telling a manager that there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. And apparently that was just egregious and so offensive and 100% the truth. And generally, when you get those feelings of you're wrong and you get so angry, it's because there's some truth to it. And I think that, if Betty leaves Joe, there was something that Joe could have done if those were the right names. I'm sorry.
So you're thinking that any time a relationship fails, anytime,
it could be both their faults.
Let's just, of course. But you're saying that one person, as long as you do your best, your relationship can never fail.
No, I'm not saying that.
But you were saying that you in the beginning of the conversation, you said if that person leaves you, then it's your fault. So that means there's something that you could have done, because for it to be your fault, there's something that you could have done. But so you're putting on any failed relationship ever, you're saying that one person could have, let's just take the man in the relationship. If he would have done this, then the relationship wouldn't have failed. And I disagree with that. I don't think. Otherwise, you're flat out, you're basically blaming either side. Hey, it's completely your fault. Whereas, what if you're meeting the needs, you're doing the things that they want, but there's just another person that is a different embodiment. They look different than you. They're more attractive. Your person is, they're more sexually attracted to them. Or, they found out after 10 years with someone, there's a flame died down. Even the attempts, and they took them back out, and you try to wine and dine her all over again.
You really want to dig in on this, don't you?
Well,
because I told you were wrong.
Absolutes are very difficult.
And
you're speaking in an absolute. You're saying that if a relationship fails, the one person always could have done something to keep that relationship together. That's an absolute.
Well, generally, all or nothing thinking is wrong.
And that's why I'm pushing back on it so far, because I don't like the idea of telling anyone that there's an absolute, that anytime a relationship fails, it's your fault.
Well, then that's just a different philosophy that you and I have. I take extreme ownership, and if my marriage fails, it's on me. It's on me, but it's not about me.
Got it. So in this type of thinking, because I like the idea of extreme ownership, because I think personal responsibility is something that our society desperately needs to level up in. But in that type of thinking, it's the idea that, wow, I'm trying to work my way through this, that there's no way that the other person in a relationship could have simply just chosen somebody else. Everything was good. You were a phenomenal father, husband. Well, a billionaire came up and they decided to go with that person.
My wife's not money motivated, so I can only speak from my own personal.
There's someone that might be.
Right. And I can't control their relationships or their decisions. But what I can say that in our marriage, what we do is that the closer we grow to Jesus, the closer we grow together. We try to pray together. We have we've gone to weekends to remember through family life. And it was interesting when I first moved into our neighborhood back in 2012 when we moved into Brighton. I sent out an email asking for, hey, can anybody dog sit? My wife and I are going to a marriage retreat, and everybody thought we were having all these problems. And it was kind of funny to me, but who's the greatest basketball player, or who's the greatest UFC fighter in the world right now, do you think? Pound for pound, best. Active.
Oh, man, pound for pound is always hard to debate because it's so relative. Ooh, pound for pound, maybe no, not Adesanya, because he just got beat by Jan when he tried to move up a weight class. Francis, is probably the scariest man on earth. But pound for pound, I don't think he's definitely not the most skilled. Oh, sorry, Francis. But overall, his skill, I wouldn't rate him at the top. I don't know who I would say pound for pound.
Just give me any name, hypothetically. Who's so who's your favorite? Who's your favorite UFC fighter?
Of all time or now?
Active.
Favorite active UFC fighter. God, there's so many people I have different appreciation for. Man, it's funny. I'm a coach of MMA, but like I appreciate so many of them for
Just
so many
one.
different
Come on,
things. They bring
I'm
to the
backing
table.
you into the corner.
Let me just say Jose Aldo.
Okay, so Jose, does he practice?
Yeah, of course he practices.
Does he train?
Yeah.
But if he's like one of the greatest in the world, why would he do that?
I mean, because the bar is always being raised. The
Right.
standards are always increasing. There's the hungry lion that's right behind you is still on the come up. And you might have a little separation from him now, but if you could stop working, that separation is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
And that's why my wife and I went to a weekend to remember back in 2012, because we're firm believers that nobody's taught us how to do marriage. Sure, we've watched our parents' examples, but those aren't always great examples. So we believe that we need to practice and train in our marriage and our relationship to continue the relationship. So we go to the weekend to remember. We listen to Family Life podcasts. We have a book that's like a devotional every day where they ask a question, you got to answer it. My wife never stays in the line. And next year when I have to write, it's a 3-year journal thing. I'm like, it's not going to be shortened on my stuff, but it's just a way to continuously pour into a relationship.
So you're incredibly active in your relationship.
Absolutely.
You are over the top, extreme ownership. We're going to make sure that we give our best to this thing. That's a super healthy thing. And honestly, as I've been processing your extreme ownership ideology more and more and more, I understand that it's actually very empowering because it's going to force you to level up. So that way when your relationship fails and maybe you did all the things you could have and maybe you didn't, but either way, you're going to, at the end, in the final product, you're going to step up and say, you know what, the next time I'm going to do even better. I could have done more. I could have done this. So it's an empowering thing. And it's a motivational thing, I would imagine, for a lot of people, because then you come out of it realizing like it's on me versus it's them. So if I had to pick between extreme ownership or victim mentality, I would definitely say this side is a healthier side to be on.
Thank you. I agree. And to go back to the question you asked about some of the daily disciplines. So one of them is coming here every morning, 6 a.m. punches and crunches with JLC, who's an absolute savage and a beast. And I have so much respect for him, the manner in which he speaks of veterans, the manner in which he puts out and gives to puts out his energy and gives to those that are in his class. He's amazing. And I'm so grateful for him. He's always pushing us and likes to have fun. He's a funny guy, the meme king. This morning we were kind of going back and forth. I said I was going to outsource some meme making to some company in India for 50 cents a day to get into a meme war. And then I was like, no, this guy's going to throttle out. So getting up every morning and exercise, I think that exercise is so important mentally. I'm not a brain scientist like Dr. Hickson, but I'm a firm believer in it because I've seen the transformation in my life. If I don't exercise, there's some dark places that I can go in my mind. And I too have, had, suicidal thoughts and, ideations and those things in my life. Think about June 2018 when I was in the crux of a chaotic situation. I got stupid drunk at a high school graduation party. Super embarrassing. Really created some waves within my neighborhood to the point where one of my neighbors actually called the police on me. My wife, who loves me dearly, she wouldn't let the cops come in because she was like, nope, he's okay. And she's like, they're like, who's he yelling at? Who's he fighting with? Himself. So it was just me, Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, just going nuts. And thankfully she was smart enough to put me on the phone with my 2 best friends who kind of talked me off the cliff. And, at that point was an inflection to where I needed to reevaluate what I was doing with my life and look at the children that I have and the future that I want to have. And do I want them to see me fall down dumb, drunk, or do I want to be an honorable disciple of Christ that can, guide them down the path? I've done a lot of listening to Ryan Mickler recently in the Order of Man podcast, who talks about masculinity and bringing back masculinity. I've watched TED Talks from, it's the author of Strong Father, Strong Daughter. So it talks about the importance of a father figure within their life. And then just recently watched it's a Christian movie, Finding the Father, and it's an amazing movie. We went on a date night. That's another thing that we do every 2 weeks is we go out on a date because continuously pursuing my wife, and she cried through like 95% of the movie. It was a really emotional movie, but she has a great relationship with her dad, and I love my father-in-law, Ron. He's an amazing man. But I was fortunate enough to have this big old Department of Veterans Affairs in my backyard that I never took advantage of. And I kind of decided that, hey, I should certainly do a little bit of therapy. And therapy is like a drug. It can be addicting. But I was fortunate enough to get involved with the substance use disorder clinic, which I thought was much better than, some of the other things that they could say. And was able to turn my life around and get into those habits, because greatness isn't just a thing that happens. Greatness happens because of our habits. There's so many books out there about habits, Atomic Habits, and like you set a goal. And one of the things that I do is I have put God first, then my wife, then my kids, then business, and all sorts of things. And there's sub goals, and I rate those every Sunday. I'll go and reflect and say, where am I at? Did I miss the mark? Did I hit the mark? And just kind of doing those daily disciplines and ensuring that weekly I look at it. Did I work out 3 times a week? Yep, check. Have I, had a coffee with dinner or a coffee with Rachel in the morning? Check. Have I made dinner at least one night out of the week to take that burden off my wife? Yep, check. And if I don't do those, did I get Rachel out of the house? Like my CPA, I showed him my my spreadsheet, and he was like, "Was that something you got out of the Bible or something?" And I was like, "No, just created it myself. Just these are my priorities. These are what I want to do." And he was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. But why is it your responsibility to ensure your wife gets out by herself?" And I was like, "Because if I don't,
extreme ownership.
Yeah, because if I don't push her out by herself or with friends, she is a helper. Like, I'm an Enneagram 8. I'm a challenger. Me and you can go back and forth on things, and I can disagree. And I can argue both sides of an argument just for the sake of argument. Like my best friend Newt will say, "I'm not getting into this with you. Like, I don't care. You're not worth it. You'll go forever." With my wife, I have to push her out because she's a helper, and she will sacrifice everything to ensure that those around her, my kids and myself, are taken care of. So she needs to take care of herself, and that's kind of the hardest thing for her, is to take care of herself, because she wants to make sure that everybody else is taken care of first.
That makes sense. And I think this leads us into a really good direction about leadership and powerful men and figures and powerful women too. I mean, I feel like, isn't it weird to have to, like, when I now say powerful men, I have to like back that statement up, be like, and powerful women. There's a certain feature of society now that is like attacking traditional standards and norms, and because like a lot of things throughout history were not healthy, were not good things, we're not proud of them, you know what I mean? Everything from slavery to so much prejudice that's existed throughout time, so many things are bad, but like I feel like we don't really acknowledge so much that is good and necessary from the past that we could have learned from, you know what I mean? And powerful male figures are a good thing for a society. I would argue that with anyone. And like, even leadership needs to change. Like I remember when I was first working at the dealership years and years and years ago, their management style was basically like keep you so in fear of losing your job that's how they would get you to perform. Like if you don't produce this or you don't do this or you know what I mean, you'd be out of here. And I remember one of the biggest wake up calls of my life about like, that'll never happen to me, is I was working at Champion Chevrolet, and I would watch grown men in their 40s and 50s get pulled into an office over mistakes that they made, and the manager would stand up and scream in their face. I mean, I'm talking, "You fucking idiot, blah, blah, blah." And I remember being like, what? Like, time, because I'm a very, like, I have a certain dark part of my personality. I think from some of the things that like, I am a fighter to the core, and you try to talk to me like that, I don't care if you will if you're Francis Ngannou and you'll beat I promise, with every bit of fight that I can bring to you, if you treat me like that, I'm going to fight you. You know what I mean? And like, I would see these men being absolutely crushed by this other dude, and because of fear of not being able to provide for their family and not being able to make a living, and like, where will I go? The fear of the unknown. Like, if I lose this job, I'm doomed. Like, why would you be doomed? Like, go get another job. You have skills, you know what I mean? You can probably get to a healthier environment. I'm sure you can find another paycheck. But like, the fear is so controlling of these people that they're allowing another man who simply just has a different title to stand in their face and scream at them like I don't even know how to describe it, but like it's as bad as I'm making it to be, or worse. Like he would belittle these people to a degree that I couldn't even believe. And I remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, fucking right. I will deck that dude and happily leave. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way. And what I'm getting to with this is management, I don't really think is a productive, healthy thing. That style of management where you are just like crushing the people below you, and through fear, you're like, you don't get this shit done, you know, you're gone. You're developing a level of loyalty. Like the people that used to work there, they only just did enough to like get their paycheck. But like when they would get together, not around their boss, you know what I mean? And they'd be talking to me, they'd be like, that guy's the biggest piece of shit ever. They would be wishing terrible things on him, like, you know what I mean? Because they hated him, but it was like the management style there believed in that's how you produce results. Versus I learned from that at a young age, because I'm in my, like, I worked there from the time I was a teenager as a porter, like scraping out gutters and like being treated like shit by everybody, you know what I mean? All the way up to like getting to be the lead service advisor that was training the new people that came in. I was like the top guy by a lot. So I worked my way through watching how they treated me differently, sawing how my power increased through a position. And then I went like, dude, I was a human being then, and I'm the same human being now. But look at how the dynamics of power have changed now. Look at how the same people that might have treated me this way now treat me so much differently. And it really changed my mind and opened my eyes towards leadership. And I was like, dude, we need to create a society and systems and businesses and environments where leaders build other human beings. And I think currently that's lacking in a lot of society. I think we are lacking good leaders. We are lacking people that say, listen, regardless of whether you want to hear this or not, your habits are not healthy and they're not good for you and they're not going to take you down a good direction. You know what I mean? And like, that might come across feeling like an attack, but that is what we need to grow. If you're just like your child's friend and every time your child messes up, you're just like, it's okay, buddy. There's no consequences at all for any of your actions. Like, cause I love you. You're not going to produce a successful member of society, or they're going to have to go through a lot of times, you know, the first time in life that they go, I'm allowed to do whatever I want. And police are like, you're going to jail. You're going to jail tonight. You know what I mean? And the kid's going to be like, this has never happened before. It's like, we need more leadership. We need more powerful figures. Men need to not be afraid to be men. You know what I mean? Like, even a lot of people around this area now, I feel like they're afraid to just be powerful. They're afraid to stand up on a belief, like during the coronavirus, guys, or anything else, anything. I don't even want to get into one topic. If you firmly believe in something, you should be able to stand proudly in that, and hopefully you back your beliefs with information, and you're not just standing there, with a weapon with no ammunition. But we need more of this, right? And how would you say that learning these leadership qualities has affected your life? Listening to Jocko, applying these things to your life, seeing, you brought up John Chalbeck, watching other leaders and pulling some from them. Let's just talk about leadership in general in life. And because you're someone that's very willing to be like a strong, powerful figure. Like sometimes you'll shake my hand and you don't get a good handshake and you'll be like, wait a second, I got to redo that because I need to
reestablish dominance.
You know what I'm saying? So you're very, very aware of the aura you're giving out and the presence that you're having. So you obviously understand the impact of leaders. And we were talking before the podcast, before I rambled for too long, we were talking before the podcast about how you were saying one of the number one statistics for success or failure is a strong male leader in life. And we need to get back to this stuff 100%.
Agreed. So there's two questions that are lingering in my mind. That one, what is a man? And then two, how do you define leadership? So for me, a man rejects passivity, accepts responsibility, leads courageously, and invests eternally. Those are biblical principles. And then as far as leadership, John Maxwell would say leadership is influence. Jocko would say leadership is by any means necessary to get the job done. And I agree that there is a lack of leadership because Echelon Front, and which is Jocko's management consulting firm on leadership, as well as I am a member, a classmate, whatever you want to call it, of the Extreme Ownership Academy. We meet every essentially Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, live sessions with the whole Echelon Front team, where you can ask questions, and they talk about leadership and the mindsets for victory. And it talks about, for instance, cover and move. That's about teamwork. That's all that is. And then next is communications, which is simple, clear, simple, clear, concise, and then prioritize and execute. So you and I are in a gunfight. We got somebody, let's say JLC's out, got shot, and is laying there. So what is the priority? Is it to shoot suppressive fire so that you can go out there and grab him and pull him in? Or are we just going to cover down and let JLC get blown away and die? So you have to prioritize and execute. And then finally, it's decentralized command. Decentralized command essentially is that you know the mission and I know the mission, and you have the autonomy to make decisions to be successful. And those are the things that, a man and masculinity are. And I listen to Ryan Mickler as well from Order of Man, who talks about masculinity all the time. And there's toxic masculinity, and people make fun of masculinity. Masculinity is a good thing. It's a great thing. And leadership is something that we need desperately in this country. We need it in the communities. And leadership in the aspect of not just raising awareness. I'm raising awareness. No. I'm not going to do anything. Are you aware? Well, that's because of me, because I'm raising awareness. You wouldn't have known this if I had not talked about it. But they don't do anything. So I try to make sure that I take care of my home first. So I've been blessed in my life to have great adventures around the world. And I'm trying to think of the name of the book, but Wild at Heart by John Eldridge talks about how every man needs a battle to fight, an adventure daily, and a woman to save. And basically, like, I've been fortunate, and now I'm in the position to where I have 4 children. I have a beautiful wife. That's my focus right now. So when I get invited to do things, I think about a time I was out with my attorney and another man, and they're like, hey, we want to go down to the Detroit Athletic Center, the DAC, and do some kind of like business development. I was like, oh, when is it? They're like, oh, it's 6 o'clock. And I said, I can't do that. That's during my kids' jiu-jitsu. And they look at me like I got a third eye growing on my head, like, you're going to your son's jiu-jitsu practice instead of going to grow your business and make more money for your family. Like, what's wrong with you? Because those are my priorities. Been invited on other podcasts and sent a Calendly link where it's all outside of business hours. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. At 4:30, I shut down and I focus on the family because I have this very small window, this blink of an eye will be gone, or my kids will be adults. And I hope that I have planted good seeds, healthy seeds, and watered them well enough so that when they're older, they're going to want to be with me. They're going to want to be with my wife. And they're not going to run away and say, screw you, you're a terrible person, I don't want to talk to you. Rather, they feel loved, appreciated, and adored. And so that's why I'm here with them. And I love my son Zeke, and I love the job that you do with him and my daughter Diem at Jiu-Jitsu. I think you're a phenomenal coach, and I'm just blessed to have them in my life, and I know it's going to go by quickly. I think about my time at a Fortune 500 company where I picked up the global vice president of talent acquisition. I don't know what happened to her that day in her life, but my wife was pregnant with our firstborn, Zeke. And I was like, yeah, my wife's pregnant. And she just went on this emotional rant about how don't chase the corporate ladder, Greg. Focus on the family. My daughters are both in college right now, and they will not speak to me. She was like, I can't get them to pay any attention to me because I spent my entire life to get this position. And guess what? She ended up getting fired from that job. Like, a job's going to leave you. They'll replace you, and I've done it. I've done mass layoffs. I've hired, people that, unfortunately, employees have passed away, and we've had to backfill their position. But your family's not going anywhere, and my kids will be older and gone one day. So my goal is to be the man in their life, so that and just listening to the strong father, strong daughters. I was going to listen to it in front of my kids, but I'm glad I didn't because it just talks about how sexually promiscuous girls can be without that father figure. I think it's super important that men are positive role models. So there's something I heard recently, the difference between instruction and teaching. Like, a teacher is somebody who cares and loves on them, and like you teach jiu-jitsu. But then instruction is a disciplined matter where it's like A, B, C, and there's not much room for it. So it's my job to be the instructor in my family. My wife is the teacher. I'm the instructor. Kind of the heavy in the home, which I don't love doing, but I'm not afraid to get a little bit of a deep voice, brush your teeth, get to bed, keep your hands off each other, those kinds of things. But I feel like I'm rambling at this point.
No, it's all right. It seems like a lot of principles that could be taken from the military, because you started this with like, hey, how do we execute this mission? A lot of these things in discipline and leadership and empowering other people to be leaders as well could absolutely spill over to society. And if more veterans realize that, like, you actually have some amazing tools to come back here and be ultra successful versus like, hey, when you come back, it's this bewilderment. You're back with society. There's no real direction. You can kind of pick whatever you want. That might be difficult because it's like, instead of having a certain mission that you were put on and you have an objective, you have to create the mission. You have to create the objective. But there's a beauty in that. You can aim all of those skills and character and the discipline you developed and like the regimented routine you were able to keep. And you can say, well, what do I want my life to look like? What is the vision for the future? What in 10 years is going to make me proud to have? And then take all those qualities and go crush it. Because I tell you what, you're coming back so ahead of the curve. And this might sound a little rude, but I feel like the standard of people keeps dropping over time because they're more entertained and less talented in skills. Like back in the day, you were acquiring skills constantly. We were playing football, then you go to this, and then you do this, and you run some algebra, and then you do this. There's so much entertainment now that it's knocking the competent level of people further and further down. So it's you come back out of the military, man, you have the keys to succeed if you want to. You know what I mean? So I think it's reframing that and going okay, how do I take all these skills that were crucial to me in the military and then develop a beautiful life with those skills? And I'm citing this especially with the podcast being sponsored by Vet Life. You're a former, you're a veteran. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, you've used so many of those qualities to then find and build success. I want to talk about your business too, because we haven't even got into it. What led you to starting your own company? After it sounds like you had worked for other people, you were in HR, you had done a couple things. What made you flip the switch to say, you know what? It's time for me to open my own thing. I love that jump. But you had also gone to school. You're going to an MBA. You probably felt competent in your ability to do that. But what led to that? And then talk about how your business has developed while your mindset has developed, because you're obviously always seeking out new information, new resources. You're probably practicing this extreme ownership in your business. You're probably teaching this to your people. You're probably being an example of this leadership. So talk about how this mindset has influenced your business and also how your business was founded.
Great questions. Shout out to Vet Life. They're doing an amazing job with the veterans. And essentially I was, in class sitting around a bunch of people who were super successful in the worldly visions and as well as, heavenly. And I just thought, I should do this. So I graduated high school early and had a goal and a dream with my best friend, Derek Kemker, to go down to Galveston and open up a restaurant. But when you're 18 and you have no credit and no money and no real experience, that ain't going to happen. So this gave me an opportunity to chase that entrepreneurial dream. I spoke to my wife, and Rachel just kind of was like, listen, if this is what's going to make you happy, go for it. I don't care if we lose our house and end up in a studio apartment with 4 kids, as long as you're happy and getting after it.
Dude, you have a rock in your life.
Amen. Amen. She is the best. She's like, you can lose it all. If this is going to make you happy, go for it. Whatever you want, I support you. And she's my constant cheerleader. When I feel beat down, she is there to build me up all the time. And so I was like, all right, well, let's get after it. So I spoke with my other best friend. I have a lot of best friends, and I said that a bunch, but I really, really do care about me.
Best friend.
But him and I were speaking about naming the business, and he was an All-American athlete at Michigan State, a pole vaulter, and he says, penultimate is the second to last step before your launch. So for your company, since you're an athlete, you should name it something athletic, like maybe penultimate people consulting. And I was just like, that's brilliant. So PPC was founded on the principle of you engage with me, we have a conversation, and we lay down a customized business strategy for where the gaps are and what you need to focus on. And then your next step is your launch step, where you continue to launch into success. So I've been doing that since 2018. It was certainly rocky starting out, like always. And I think that every entrepreneur can feel that, where, we're like going to the food bank and grabbing stuff because, it's a thin month, not much is coming in, and doing business development, knowing what hunger is. And, but I was blessed. And it's funny too, because on the entrepreneurial path, people are always like, oh, come on in the pool. Yeah, another entrepreneur, get in. And what I've discovered through my, entrepreneurial journey here is that people want you to get into the pool because the water's warm, because everybody's pissing themselves, because nobody knows what they're doing. And we're all just marginally better. And it's a dangerous path. It's a fun path, and it's an exhilarating path. And I was fortunate enough to be accepted into Bunker Labs. I was on 19 Bravo. Essentially, that's they're an incubator for startups I got office space in WeWork in downtown Detroit, was surrounded by other entrepreneurs that were trying to build their business. And it was an outstanding opportunity for veterans or veteran spouses who want to start their business. They give you the tools and the resources and the education and the points of contacts to help you be successful. So started that route, and was just fortunate to network with enough people. One of my first clients was a Work Skills Corporation. I helped them out with some HR activities, and it was all about just going through my natural network and reaching out to Kelly, who brought me in, and Tina Jackson, the CEO over there at Work Skills. They do phenomenal work in the community. I was blessed to have them as a first client, and then just kind of started building clientele off of that. And some clients have come, some clients have gone, but ultimately I love what I do every day because it's generally different every day. The problems are similar and the advice is similar, but it's always a different person. Like, for instance, when you go to Disney and you work there, how many times a day do they get asked, where's the bathroom? So many times. But every time they answer that, it's the first time for that person. So they have to give the Disney, the mouse way. Same situation. Maybe it's basically like, my team is stupid and I can't get them to do what I want. How do I do that? It's some question.
Be better.
Yeah. It's like, take ownership. They're not listening to you because there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. And that's chapter 2 of Extreme Ownership, where they talk about how there was 2 boat crews. One consistently came in first, another one came in last. So what they did is they switched the boat crew leaders, where the first place team went to the last place team, and the last.
Is this a story or an actual study?
This was an actual event that happened in Navy SEALs training, where they take the worst team and switch it up. And basically, the team that was in last started coming in first, and the team that was in first started to drop to the middle of the pack, because it's all about leadership. Because now you have a bad leader in charge of a good team, but that bad leader still has an impact. And so it's all about leadership skills. So when we're talking about leadership, it's so, like, what's the number one quality of a leader? Humility. Being able to say, I don't know, James, what do you think? And Jocko talks about all the time, like, you have a mission, right? So let's say that we want to grow our kids' jiu-jitsu program. How do we do that? Well, who's in charge of it? We'll say, Coach Eric's in charge of it. So, well, what do you think we should do, Eric? And then you give Eric the plan. And Eric comes up with a 70% plan, right? And you know that there's a gap there, so you just ask illuminating questions. So, well, how will this work on social media? And you just ask those questions, then they get up to an 80% plan. But you let them learn through that 20%, and they have ownership of it now, because this was my plan. So I'm all in. Instead of James saying, okay, here's the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. This is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to do it, and it's going to be successful because I came up with it. But I have to implement it. And I don't believe in it, and this is going to fail, and we're probably going to lose some kids in our jiu-jitsu program now, because James came up with this crazy plan. So you just give it. It's decentralized command. The goal is to grow the amount of kids in our jiu-jitsu program. How do you think we should do that? And now they have ownership, and now they can create, and it's giving away autonomy. People want to be the leader. I think about Captain Chiria, who I highly respect. Her and I were walking across the street one day, and she was in management. She's like, oh, everybody always wants to be in leadership. Everyone wants to be in leadership. It is not easy, Greg. And I'm like, I know, because you're dealing with people. And guess what? Everybody's different. What works with James doesn't work with Greg. And you have to take a unique approach in that. And that's my leadership philosophy is, you don't have to adapt to me, like the guy who's screaming at everybody at the car dealership. I have to adapt to you. What levers do I have to pull to motivate you to get the best out of you? And I have to pour into you. What can I give you so eventually I'm working for you? I've told that to my team many times. Like, I hope one day that I'm working for you, because I have a ceiling. You have unlimited potential, and I'm going to give you everything that I have, and then hopefully you can outgrow me, and one day I'm working for you. Like, that's what a leader is. Like, right now, my ministry's at home. There's so many things I want to do, but I know it's irresponsible, because I have this finite, small window to pour into my children so that they can be successful in their lives. And that's my mission right now. It's to love my wife and to love my kids and set them up for success. Like, my mark on the world, it's not about Greg, it's only Jesus. Like, I hope that all of my children are able to go out and set the world on fire and just love Jesus. If that doesn't happen, then, God bless them.
No, it makes sense, man. And everyone I've talked to that's super successful, Chris Kleba is someone I'm going to shout out right now because he is just a genius with team building and leadership and creating cultures. But that's what you're doing. You're getting to people. You're developing relationships with people, and you are showing those people that there's levels that they can achieve, which they'll feel better about, which they'll produce more, which they'll be a better member of a team, and they can be empowered. And through all these things, the entire culture goes up. So, like, you're in the business of people. Yeah. You're in the business of building people. You said something, though, that was extremely interesting to me, where you said the number one quality of a leader is humility. And then right after that, you said, like, well, what do you think? But then I related that instantly in my brain to, like, imagine being on the battlefield, and you're the leader, and you're calling the shots on this mission, and you said the number one quality is humility, and we're about to execute, and you go, we're in this mission. What do you think we should do, Sergeant Bum, or what do you think we should do? Is that the number one quality? Is the ability to give away the power that you have of a leader?
Absolutely, because they're the one in the battle, and they should be able to make the call through decentralized command. The training should already be done. If you're in the battle, you're in that moment. Like, how much did Phil Jackson talk during the Bulls? Like, you never saw him because he already did all the coaching.
So in a military situation, there's not one person calling the shots. It's everyone just makes their own decisions based on what they feel when they're empowered?
No, absolutely not. No, there's decentralized command to where there's so many different levels of leadership.
Decentralized command is like we all have the ability to make choices, but isn't there one person that's pretty much calling, like, isn't on a SEAL mission, isn't there one person that's guiding, like, at the front, and then the other people, like, they have their ability to make split moment things, but isn't there one leader?
There's one person in the rank that may be in charge of some, but ultimately they have the autonomy to make decisions. You know, like, if we're getting shot at, and I know that we're getting shot on the right, like, you know, contact right is what I'll yell out. And it's simple, clear, concise, contact right. Everybody knows that the firing's coming from the right.
Got it. Because I've always looked at it like you need that leader figure. You need the person that is going to, like, it
takes the accountability, right?
If we're all out on a ship out in the ocean and we got to find land, and a captain knows how to get us there, and everyone else they're good crewmen and everything like that, but it's like, James, where is land? And I'm like, where do you think land is? Come on up here. Like, you know what I mean? There's a certain thing that, like, leaders do have to be able to embrace, like, the biggest struggle too. Like, if a tiger busts in the room to kill all of us, and we have one person that's most capable of trying to defend it, it's like we don't want him to be like super humble in that point, be like, hey, why don't you kill the tiger? Like, I do think we should also empower leaders to be leaders while inspiring others to be leaders. But, like, some people, let's be honest, some people are more alpha than others. Some people are more intelligent than others. Some people have better decision making than others. And we want to build those people as much as possible. But if you hand it over the ability, like, your business, you're running your business, you're giving it your best, you're the leader, you have a secretary that works for you, and there's a huge business decision coming up, it's a wild thing to think that you're like, well, as a leader, my number one quality is humility. You're going to make this call. If you can get to a culture where you literally have that high level of leaders, I think that is the ultimate goal, right? Is like to have a group of absolute killers. Like, everyone online relates everything to lions, like a group of lions that, like, no matter what, you know you're going to get a lion result. But I do think a leader, like, you're a powerful figure. And in being that, you might have to be the one that makes the decisions at certain times, you know.
So let's go back to Chris. So he has a new business next to Belter. Maybe it's not that new. It seems like it's new to me. But the manner in which he communicated the value of working there was outstanding. Like, it inspired me. Like, I hope my kids can go there and work. Because a lot of things that Chris was saying is exactly, I subscribe to those leadership.
You two, we would be, if the three of us were in a room talking about leadership, that man is obsessed with leadership. Same. And so much of what you're saying is exactly what he preaches. I mean, you would absolutely hit home runs together. But if Chris had to make a decision about the future of his store versus his manager, he's going to make the decision. Go, no, I am the leader, you know, and I have a bigger perspective, or I've acquired more knowledge, or I'm a little bit ahead of you. Although I'm bringing you up, if I've put the time in the ranks, and I'm the military guy, and I've been there first, like, I am the leader for a reason. Like, there is a leader, there is a top of the pyramid. You know what I mean? So we want to bring that base level as high as humanly possible, but we need leaders.
But does the server who has a disgruntled customer have to contact Chris to ask, do we comp this meal?
These are small things.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, they should have the team should have the autonomy to make decisions.
That makes sense.
Like there is a certain line, like, hey, you don't go spend $1 million and, you don't go buy something that's outside of your.
I took it literally like the leader in a leadership situation where you need the leader to make the decision, being like, my number one quality is humility. I'm going to let my team member make this. There are certain times where as leader, you're going to carry certain weights and responsibilities where you're going to have to make the really difficult call. And you know what? If it goes bad, it is going to be on you. But that is like a pressure of leadership.
It's all on you, but not about you. For instance, one of the many hats I wear is I'm the president for the Livingston Area HR Association. So at the beginning of the year, I brought in an external consultant to do a board training. And I kind of guided her and said, my number one goal is recruitment, because we're a volunteer organization. We live and die on our volunteers. And when I came into the position, one of the past presidents said to me, like, we were at one point like looking to shut this thing down because we couldn't get enough people to step up and lead. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for that. We'll make that happen. So did I roll out the plan of recruitment? Did I come up with the strategy of recruitment? Nope. All I did was say, hey, this is important. Don't you agree? Like, do you want to leave as the treasurer and know that there's nobody left to do the job? No. So we've kind of implemented before you go, let's hope that there's somebody that you've poured into and you have a succession plan so that you're not leaving us hamstrung in with empty cupboards.
It makes perfect sense.
So they have taken owner and they have grown the board and the committees so much. And I am so proud and honored to be in the position to work with these phenomenal HR professionals. And they just blow me away. Like Julia right now is working with Cleary and Lisa as well on launching a student chapter. So I would never have thought of that, but they've taken this idea to where, hey, you want to build a pipeline of talent? Get into the college, and not only get into the college, but get into the college with those who want to go into HR, and that's a forever pipeline. So, like, I didn't think of that. That was their plan. Yeah, I just said we needed to recruit. So, as the leader, my thought is, here's an area of opportunity for improvement. What do we do?
Yeah, and so you empower the others, but you as the leader going in there, being that one that was like, hey, we're going to bring these people together. We're going to empower them. We're going to step up. That created like the initial driving force versus a thing that's about to go under to going, hey, if we come in here and we change the culture and we level these people up, there's solutions within these people and within this group, and there's potential within this group. But you also did that. Give yourself some credit as the leader that went in there and empowered those people, because maybe another guy comes in, a manager comes in, crushes all those people down, says, I know how to do it, this is what we're doing, and then it fails.
Well, that was kind of how I was selected as the past president. Andrea was like, I don't know. I've never done this before. You've done this before. You're the past president for the Greater Ann Arbor SHRM. Can you help me? And I was like, absolutely. I'd love it. Like, you get all the credit. And as the leader, I firmly believe that the team gets the credit, and anything that bad happens, I'm responsible. I'm 100% responsible. If the speaker doesn't show up, that's my fault. I didn't effectively communicate it. If we lose members, that's my fault. I didn't properly show the value of the organization. So everything is my fault. Again, it's all on me, but it's not about me.
Dude, I feel that to the fullest. I tell you what, I've always tried to stay in the background. Like, people say, like, James, why don't you have a poster of you up around here, or like, well, a big thing on the fighter thing, and it's like, I don't want the credit. But I feel every failure, every single loss, or every single thing that's a setback, I take full blame for. Like, it haunts me, and I'll have to work through my mind. Like, why did this failure happen? Was it a relationship thing? Was it a work ethic thing? Was it this? You know what I mean? But like, when we win, I don't even care about the credit. It's like, because you're in that energy, and that winning energy is infectious. You know what I mean? And if more people went into that winning energy in all ventures of their life, and they got that feeling of like, this is what it feels like to set out on something worthwhile that you believe in, and produce results, you know what I mean? And then once you do it enough, it's infectious. You're like, I'm going to do it in everything. I'm going to win in everything that I do, and then it yields, a very good existence.
But winning can breed arrogance.
Without a doubt. But without an ego, you don't produce results. A lot of people will tell you, like, leave your ego at the door. The ego is what drives you to be successful. If you have no ego, go sit in a hut, be Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. Don't fight for anything. Don't worry about your money. Don't worry about the quality of your family's life. Don't do any of these things. These are ego-driven things. You don't need that. If you just build a straw hut somewhere and provide for your family the basic necessities, ego is a good thing. And I would argue that with a lot of people. An unhealthy ego is bad. Mm-hmm. But an ego in the right way makes you strive more. I went through this process in my 20s where, like, I didn't like certain parts of my my character. And I actually attacked my ego constantly because I got very good at jiu-jitsu quickly, and I started winning events, and I started, being known for that jiu-jitsu, and people were all telling me how awesome I was. Like, oh, you're so sick. You're winning these events. Like, because I was self-taught, and I just had no business doing as well as I did. So everyone was telling me how awesome I was. And then I, did my MMA debut, and I submitted the guy in 8 seconds. Everyone's going, oh, you're incredible. And it went to my head for a little bit. And then I'm a person that's big into self-reflection. So then I got into this, I went into this maybe 2 or 3 year period in the middle of my 20s where I was like, I have to kill my ego. The ego is so unhealthy.
Ego is the enemy.
Exactly. Ego is the enemy, and I'm a bad person if I have an ego. And you know what I actually did? I'll be honest with you. I killed so much of my competitive fire because I got to the point where, in any time I did any type of comparison or wanted to, give myself credit where it was due for, achieving results or working hard and accomplishing things, it was like, that's your ego. That makes you a bad person. You should stop that. You should be more compassionate and empathetic and loving. You shouldn't care about your victories. And then it was funny. A couple of years into this journey, I took a step back and I go I'm almost the fire in my heart or the lion inside or whatever it was. I was beating that thing down every day on this ideology or this philosophy that the ego is such a horrible thing in our personality. And then then I take a step back and I reflect and I'm like, is it bad? Is it bad that I want to provide a beautiful life for my family? And by doing that, I might have to step up, and I might have to put my skills up front, and I might have to, because I don't look at it as putting others down, but I might have to rise up through the ranks. And if you don't want to rise up, that's kind of on you. Because if I give you the tools and I empower you and I want to see you be successful, but you choose to put in 1/10 of the work ethic that I do, and you're not as disciplined, you're not as regimented, and then I go up, am I allowed to be proud of those things? Because the ego philosophy would say that's being arrogant. You know what I mean? So I think there's a fine line. I think a healthy ego is such a good thing for a man to have. I think you should have an ego, and an ego keeps you hungry. You know what I mean? Keeps you driving, keeps you chasing, keeps you striving. An unhealthy ego is when you all of a sudden are like, I am greater than all other human beings. I can talk to you like shit because you work at Kmart and I'm a business owner. That's unhealthy.
Agreed.
But I think the idea of killing the ego or losing your ego, because I've been down that road, and I went down that road for multiple years, especially around my study of Buddhism, and it turned me into this no, don't fight let everything go. No matter what happened to me in my life, it's just not in my control. And I just, I almost got to a weakened state of myself, and then I had to start rebuilding. Wait a second, you actually have the right to be upset about that. That's not right, etc.
But healthy ego is important.
Ego is what I'm talking about here. If anyone heard that and you thinks that I'm raving about being an egomaniac, I am not. But I am saying there's a part of your psychology that we call the ego that keeps you striving and desiring and wanting more. And if you take that and you match that with other great qualities for a human being, like building leadership in others and being compassionate, it's a great thing to possess.
So what are the foundational roots of conflict is egos? I'm right, you're wrong. You really dug in on the breakup. To me, that shows ego, because I had told you were wrong, and then you just kept digging in. So I have to subordinate my ego, and so we can move forward and have a amicable relationship. And there's times where the ego is the enemy, and you agree with that, and being egotistical and not being able to admit you're wrong. I've been wrong so many times in my life. I think the last time was October 1993, and I said it was going to be sunny, but it wasn't. It was a cloudy day. And I haven't been wrong since. That's because of my ego.
He does comedy on the side.
Yeah, definitely. But Jocko does talk about the ego, and usually, so ego is just like anger. And I tried to, and I've gone through anger management, and I can go from 0 to 100 really quick with my anger, especially if it's somebody who is threatening my children. There was one incident in this gym that I still feel terrible about because I haven't seen that dad since. And if he's out there watching this, hey man, I'm sorry that, I went Papa Bear on you and got a little aggressive in my response, because my goal is to always build a positive relationship. In this gym and Michigan Institute of Athletics and Scorpion Fighting System, there's such a great energy and a positive energy here. The fact that, I allowed my ego to swell up and get angry because I felt that somebody was attacking my child wholly inappropriate. And I haven't seen him to apologize. So if you're out there, I apologize. You know who you are. But we have to be able to detach ourselves from our ego and our emotions and hear what's being said. Is ultimately with, not to dive into this because we won't, but the mask, anti-mask, vaccines, anti-vaccines, all that stuff. It's ego, right? Like there might be some hater comments on this for the crazy things I've said, or somebody will disagree with me. And how many battles have been won online? Has anybody ever said, "Oh, you know what, James? You're right. I'm wrong."
Who holds the Keyboard Warrior World Championship? I don't even know. Who's the champ right now?
I don't know. Conor McGregor's pretty good.
That's a solid point. But I agree with you 100%. But there is also a thing where like the truth matters and information matters. Mm-hmm. And if you're not willing to take a stance on something, because if you're saying like, well, if you want to debate something, it's your ego that's wanting to debate it. Well, like what if there was, let's not talk about the issues that we did, but some doctor, lobotomy was one time used as a medical procedure. There was they used to do shock therapy to schizophrenic patients where they would electrocute the fuck out of them and think that was going to help them, right? If someone wanted to do something like that to your son, hey, we're going to give your son all these pharmaceutical untested drugs and because we think it's good for him, I would hope that your ego would go, I have a healthy young man and you are not giving them all these pharmaceutical drugs. And that is, and you might say, well, it's my ego wanting me to argue, but you need that ego. Otherwise it's hey, we think we should take your CCP thinks that they should take your son from you because they don't really like your views on certain things. So they're going to take your child because it's better for them. I would hope that your ego would swell up and say, no.
Well, ego is intended to protect us.
Without a doubt. So we do need to use it. You know what I mean? And information and the truth matters. Apparently not so much in certain issues anymore, but it matters to me. So I think if someone challenges you something with that you firmly believe, and hopefully you have a strong foundation on why you believe that, is inaccurate or not productive of a healthy future, I would hope that males, females, strong leaders in general would stand up and say, no. We're not doing that. And that requires that, dig your feet in a little bit and be we're not going to do this. You know what I mean? So you need, a little bit of that fire, but then you got to contain it. It's like a fire in a home. I have a fireplace in my house. It can warm us. It's comfortable. It's nice. A fire can burn your house down.
Yep.
So you have to, keep that in the correct, check. But I think it's super important. I think a lot of people out there go through this life. I know a couple of examples from the dealership where they are belittled their whole life. They're held down. They have a thumb on their head. People tell them they're not good enough, and they just go with it. And they're great, and usually they are awesome people. They're people that are such good human beings, but they're just so broken down because they don't have that quality to put their feet down and go, you know what? Don't talk to me that way. You know what I mean? And so I kind of want to inspire a little bit in that in others because you see it in kids that are bullied. You see it in victims. You see it in people that never really push for their dreams. Somewhere in society or through people, a lot of times, they're told that you can't. You're told that you're held down. You're told that you're lesser than me. The reason I'm getting this promotion is because I'm the shit and you suck. We need people to realize you can stand up for yourself. You can have a healthy ego. You can, especially if you know you're a good person and you know that a lot of who you are and what you think is based in a good place, then you can proudly take a stance because you're not afraid of the spotlight. You know what I mean? If you're out there doing all this messed up stuff and you're behind the scenes like a complete shithead, you know what I mean? It's a lot harder to stand up in the front and be I'm going to challenge this thing because people would be like, wait,
You?
The same guy that's doing A, B, C, and D. You know what I'm saying? So I also want to make sure that we push, in my opinion, to people out there, they're an ego is not a bad thing. Just got to be in check. Correct. There's so many things have to be in moderation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You can become an extremist in almost anything. And that's probably not healthy.
And that's why Jocko and Leif have a companion follow-up book to Extreme Ownership. So they're extreme, that's too much. And now they have the dichotomy of leadership, which talks about you can go too far. You can go way too far with ownership. That's my fault. That's my fault. You can go too far with that. So there is a dichotomy, there is a balance, and I 100% agree that your ego could be too big or your ego could be too small. And if you allow those negative thoughts, I had an executive coach who would listen to me speak, and she'd say, "Greg, that's you have to stop that. You're saying negative things and belittling yourself. And I know you think that that's funny, but those are just, those aren't good things to say about yourself. Be positive and, stop the negative thoughts. So quiet the negative voice was what I think about when those thoughts start bubbling up, like, you know what, Greg, what are you going to do? Like, Darren McCartney, Dr. Seth Hickerson, Chris Kleba, all these amazing people have been on the Gray Area podcast. What am I going to do there? It's like, stop that negative thought. You have value. You have an MBA from Michigan. You have a beautiful wife, good kids. You love Jesus. You've done 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan, did over 100 convoys in Afghanistan. You've done amazing things in your life. You have a story to tell. Go out there and tell it. You've adapted, overcome, and persevere. So it's just stopping those negative voices and having, the humility to know that I'm good, but I can be better. And I was listening to Ed Milet before I came out here today, and he says that, who he is today is sufficient enough, but who he is next year better blow away who the person it is that's sitting here today. And I agree. Every day I want to get a little bit better. I think is it Atomic Habits or one of those books talk about be 1% better tomorrow than you are today. And Dr. Jordan Peterson, his 12 Rules for Life, talks about don't compare yourself to somebody else is today. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. So I look at who I was yesterday, and that's why I do the weekly going into the spreadsheet. How many times I did this, how many times did I do that, and I got to get better. I got to get my numbers up. I have to do more mindfulness. And I love what Dr. Seth Hickerson talks about. Like, what is mindfulness? It's a real catchy thing. Everybody's talking about it. It's thinking about your thinking. What are my thoughts? What's going on? What's the internal dialogue that I'm having with myself? What am I saying about myself? I'm a champion. I'm a disciple of Christ. I'm a loved husband. I'm a respected father. And I respect everybody because I try to look at them. Those are children of God. Even non-believers or people who, will poo-poo all over Christianity and say that I'm crazy. Well, that's okay, because I love Jesus and he loves you, and so I have to treat you with respect. And
yeah, no, 100%, man. And so I think, again, moderation, and you're always on a quest of leveling up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like knowing that where you are is temporary is really important too. Like your life might suck right now, and you might even be way less than what you should be. And you might have had a lot of things hit you, but that does not mean you have to stay there. And the more that you surround yourself with the right people and the more that you take in this information, the better you're going to like get back on that course you need to be. And then the way that you just listed out those characteristics about yourself, that rebuilds your self-esteem, that builds a sense of who you are, which gives you that feeling like, hey man, I matter. I have value. You know what I mean? And a lot of the people that are really broken down because of failures or things that happened to them or, things that they did that they just hold so much guilt and regret for, they got to get back to like, man, everybody has mistakes. Everybody is messed up. We all have a sad story. We all have things we've done that we're so not proud of. The question is, are you the person that learned from those experiences and now you're a much better example and you're affecting the world around you positively? Or are you continuing to put yourself in that cycle because you view yourself that way? You almost have to go back to that like, yo, there's value in here, man. Even if I fucked up a lot,
amen.
There's value in here. If we can get more people to do that through anything, like you said, through mindfulness, through religion, through yoga, through jiu-jitsu, through any of these things, if you can build this thing right here, life changes, you know what I mean? And the way you view the world changes. You and I probably see a positive in every failure.
Absolutely.
And we see an opportunity in every chaos, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, whereas some people, in every good, they see a bad. In every huge thing that happens to them, they see the loss of it that's right down the road. They see it being taken away. You know what I mean? And like that comes from in here. And especially in this culture, we don't do a lot of things where you really quiet the mind. Mm-hmm. You're entertained 24/7. You're constantly stimulated. There's a million things going on. You know what I mean? And like none of our society really talks about like sit alone and be quiet. And then when you realize you can't be quiet because you have this little monkey brain going blah, 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 song lyrics and all kind of crazy stuff, you got to realize like that is going on 24/7. And at first, you said it very well. I went through a process in my 20s where it was life-changing. I did quiet my mind, and I didn't even realize I had a loud mind. But I had a lot of shit that was going on where I just started observing. I just started giving myself like an hour window a day. And I didn't even care whatever journey I went on. I'd lay down on my floor, as silly as it sounds. I would lay down on my floor and just quiet, and I would just exist. And I would just I realized I was breathing and just see what would pop into my brain. And it was like I would just enjoy the ride. And then you start to analyze.
It's hard. Another doctor that has been on your podcast is Dr. Eric Hipple, the former NFL Lions quarterback. And Eric's a friend of mine. I love Eric. He's an amazing man. His story is so Ooh,
chilling.
yeah. Oh, and he's taken those, traumatic events and turned them into a positive to be the light in this dark world. And one of the things Eric told me many, many years ago is that I think he was in Arizona, and he said, I went out there or maybe it was California. I went out there just to quiet my mind. He said, Greg, it took me 45 minutes, an hour and a half before my mind would stop running. Like, I just had my 12th anniversary with my wife back in August, and it was great. We went up to Michigan's Adventure, and we floated around on the lazy river for 6 hours, which was amazing. And it took so long because it's about a 2.5, 3 hour drive from where we lived to where we were going. It took at least 5-6 hours for her to get out of mom mode. Like, we're in this, she's always looking left and looking right and like, where's the kids? Where's the kids? Where's the kids? Oh, is one of them drowning? Oh, did someone, are they pooping their pants? Whatever it is. But eventually she got out of that mode, and we had such an amazing, amazing anniversary. And I don't mean to sound callous when I say this, but it reminded me why I married her, because she was who she was. It was hilarious. She's absolutely hilarious. She's fun. She's got a big heart. She's got a great personality. And it was just not having those 4 kids around and just one-on-one time, and not for like a short couple hours like on date nights, but to just get away for over 24 hours together was amazing. And it was funny, as we were leaving Ludington Beach, she kind of grabbed me by my shoulder. She said, Greg, I just want to tell you I love you, and I look forward to seeing you again next year. And I was like, what are you talking about, seeing me next year? Because she knows she's going back into mom mode.
Cruise control is taking back over, Greg. She was with you, and she was autonomous for that little bit, and now it's see you again next year.
I got laundry, and yeah, she's amazing. And my wife is, she's the rock. She is, what is it? The saying something along the lines of, behind every great man is a strong woman, or something or behind every good man is a great woman. She is my rock. She's amazing. I love her to death in pieces. But just to quickly go back, and one of the things you were saying is that, we're all going into, currently in, or just coming out of a storm. And we have to be kind to each other. Like, that's one of the things I like about the Brighton area schools is kindness is a big thing. And the best compliment that I received from Miss Dackley in regards to my son was like, Zeke is really kind. And it means so much to me. And that was one of the things that when we first came in here to do jiu-jitsu back in June 2020 was everybody was so kind to Zeke. Like, you would think that being in the gym, and I know it happens in the adult side of BJJ where there's people that just come to smash people, and they're just, terrible human beings that will take a white belt and, try to rip their arm off. But that wasn't like that for my experience. When I came in here, every child was so kind to my child. They were so encouraging, and like, it was amazing to watch how they took this little boy who's like in the 2 percentile, meaning 98% of people his age and his height are bigger than him. And they were just so gentle with Zeke and so kind to Zeke and encouraging. And then you rolled with him, you taught him so many things. And I was just like, I love this place. And I love being a part of it. And I am proud of being a member and, coming in here and working out with JLC. It's an amazing place.
Do you have anything that you do routinely that you say would quiet your mind now to this day? Or are you focused on regiment and discipline? And like, are you, because there is 2 type of mindsets of like go-getter, nonstop, always hustling, grinding, you know what I mean? 24/7, you can do more, you can level up. And that's kind of polar opposite, or it could be in balance with someone that is trying to quiet the mind, slow down, take a step back, not focus on any goals for a period of time to just exist. Do you do those things, or are you in more of the grind group?
I'm definitely not in the grind group. My buddies make fun of me because I like to take naps occasionally. It's restorative. You take a little cat nap in the middle of the day. They're the best. They're the best. I do have a mindfulness app. I try to do it every day of the week from the Department of Veteran Affairs. There's a bunch of different, like a walking mindfulness. And so I try to do those generally in the morning. If I get up 04:34 up before the enemy, I will, pop that on. I'll just lay on the floor and just kind of listen, and then listen to my breathing and just try to quiet the mind. There's a great Netflix special out right now as well about mindfulness, and Rachel and I have been doing it at night once we get the kids to bed, and it's like a gratitude mindfulness, and like calming anxiety. And there's all these different types of mindfulness exercises where it's guided meditation, and it's fantastic. And it's challenging. It's challenging to quiet the mind because you're in the middle of it, and then you start thinking, oh, did I pay that bill? Oh, what time do I have to pick up Ruby from school? Oh, I got to get the kids to jiu-jitsu. And it's like, and it says it right in there. Like, if your mind wanders, gently pull it back and just focus on your breathing. So I do try to do that. I do not do it as much as I would like to, but it is on the tracker of how many times out of 7 days a week did I do this.
That's awesome, man. And I think a lot of people out there that struggle with anxiety and struggle with their mind and are battling with depression, you got to realize, like, there are tools out there. There's methods out there that can dramatically help. And it's like, you're stuck with you forever. Like, your circumstances may change. You might live in a different home, but I know incredibly wealthy people that are incredibly depressed that, struggle with their mind every single day. And I know super poor people that it looks from the outside like their life is in chaos, and they're so happy, thankful, grateful people. So it's like, you got to realize that if there's a problem in your life, like, that same ownership can yield the results you want if you seek out what you need. And the reason I'm going into this topic a little bit is, like, there's an epidemic of anxiety in this country now.
Absolutely.
Especially with the younger kids, man. These kids, especially, they, like, live through a virtual world now, so there's, like, less social interaction. Whereas, like, when we were growing up, you're outside, you're playing with people all the time. There's
fist fights.
Yeah, 100%. I got into a bunch of fights growing up. There's a dynamic where you're constantly learning how to interact with human beings, and whatever you put out into the world, you get directly responded to based on who you are. So then you make changes, and then you see how the response is different, and you know what I mean? And, like, now I feel like a lot of kids are not getting those skills. So, like, I mean, I know kids now that, like, don't want to make a phone call. Like, the idea of, like, trying to speak to someone on the phone, they won't do it. They there's memes all over the internet of, like, they pulled up to a gas station and it says, like, please see cashier. And they're like, looks like I'm not getting gas.
I'm going to go down the road.
100%. And these are wild things because you have you forever. So if you know that you have unhealthy thinking habits or your own brain might be breaking yourself down, you have to seek out these methods, and they're out there. And success leaves clues. So if you look at the people that have their shit together, and you just, like you and I are doing right now, you just have a conversation with, you might go, there's a lot of common denominators here. They're in completely different fields, but they're not. They're building people, they're creating relationships, they're working on their minds. They both keep checklists. Like, if we listed out all the similarities that we have, it would be a vastly larger list than the differences that we have. You know what I mean? The only thing I'm shocked about with you is that you don't train jiu-jitsu. You're like the model gentleman that would do jiu-jitsu. You believe in the mental progress. You've come from the military background. You are a Jocko fan. You watch MMA. Your son trains. Like, you check every single box on the list. But there's some fear. You know what it is? It's if that guy beats me and strangles me, then I'm not as powerful as I thought. And then your ego's like, yo, don't do that stuff, bro. But, like, our similarities are there all the way down the list. So if other people were to listen to this podcast, like, man, like, these guys, they really have a lot of the things that I want or I desire, or the way that they think. It's like, it's not random. There's processes through which that, we've created these things, that we've developed, that we hold ourselves accountable, that we take personal responsibility, that we have discipline, etc. Like I said, it's shocking to me you don't do jiu-jitsu.
Well, I don't do jiu-jitsu because I'm fortunate enough to be blessed with JLC, who brings the heat every morning, and as well as Brenda Balboa, a.k.a. Brenda Tipton, who is the governor, the governator for the Rotary Club, and she is the heart of 6 a.m. If you're not at the 6 a.m. punches and crunches, you need to come out and meet Brenda, who is just so energetic and so positive. She is my inspiration, and I get out there and start punching the bag, and she's yelling and just getting into it, and she's amazing. And I love being around that group. It's kind of like a family, and yeah. So should I do jiu-jitsu? Absolutely. Do I do jiu-jitsu? No. But I live vicariously through my children. And there's a family here. I don't know their names, but they come in as a family.
The new family that just came in.
Yeah. And they come in with their 4 children, and it's like I envy them and I aspire to be like them, because my goal is, and I've talked to multiple people around here, is that when my kids get out of school, we have a little snack and we come out to the gym and everybody rolls. And then because jiu-jitsu is life. And why is Jocko such a big fan of jiu-jitsu? Because every day we're encountering a challenge, and how many different moves are there in jiu-jitsu? It's pretty basic, but there's a million different ways to do it. There's so many different ways to do a guillotine choke, or a rear naked choke, or whatever it is, and you have to adapt to those, and you have to see them. And I think that if my kids if I'm able to influence them, they will be doing jiu-jitsu through their entire life, because there's so many lessons that can be learned.
We actually have your family, and if you look at the Basio family,
amazing,
incredible.
Teresa's going to be a world champion.
All
without
three
question.
of those kids are going to be such powerful leader, like like their potential is endless, and they just happen to also be awesome in jiu-jitsu. And now you have this other family. You're starting to see all these similarities, and for children to develop under the idea that like constantly they are forced into stressful situations. Like imagine if you're an adult at home and you've never trained jiu-jitsu, another human being on top of you, sweating on your face, holding you down against your will, trying with all of their physical abilities, mental abilities, and technical abilities to break you, to force you to succumb to a submission hold, to have to admit defeat, to then battle it in every single day. And now you have a child that can handle that. That child is fighting fight or flight every single day. They're fighting those uncomfortable feelings every day. They're fighting feelings of inadequacy every day. They're learning how to develop skills and before they gain the confidence. Because when you first come into jiu-jitsu, you get butchered. You'll go against someone that you're like, okay, like even if they know jiu-jitsu, there's no way I lose to that person. Like there's
throttled.
Yeah, like listen, I'm not gonna lose to that. Like Gabriel. Gabriel's a great example. Little Gabe, he's this big. He's maybe 100 pounds at the most. I watch him strangle like 180-pound college kids or male adults that he'll get on their back and they are like, I'm not going to get choked out by this child. And then he seals it in and and they tap. And I can see, we actually just had a state trooper who's like 6'3", like 220, and he got tapped out by Kate.
Oh.
Kate walks around at 112 pounds.
But she's here all the time.
And she's a white belt.
She's amazing.
But she got him in a guillotine choke that he went to take her down, and she caught a guillotine choke, and she just cranked it. He tried to rip his neck out, and he had to tap. And the look in his face, imagine being a state trooper, you're a huge guy, you're an authority figure, you're a powerful role in society, you're constantly enforcing things, and this little woman just strangled you. Mm-hmm. And you were
humble. We'll be humbled. And that's one thing about Gabe too. His testimony is, I was really, kind of depressed and, lacked confidence. And since I've been doing this, I built confidence. If that's not a testimony to get your kids in jiu-jitsu, I don't know what is. When he said that, it further cemented it, because Jocko's always preaching about jiu-jitsu. And so I do the punches and crunches and the hit in the bag and boxing. But what happens if I'm about to get into a fight with somebody? I should run. I should run away. But what if they grab me, chase me down, and jump on top of me? Now what do? My boxing ain't going to help. Wrestling ain't going to help. Muay Thai ain't going to help. Taekwondo ain't going to help. But jiu-jitsu, the smaller person versus the larger off my back, is going to protect me. And I have 3 daughters. And growing up in this world and knowing how, boys will just be boys, is not an okay thing. And I want my daughters to be able to, if they're ever in a situation to where somebody's going to try to do something inappropriate with them, that they can slap a triangle on them. They can, hip escape. And
nothing better in the world for women to learn than jiu-jitsu. There's nothing better. No, I don't care. I would argue that with anyone, because that gives the woman the ability to defend themselves and feel safe. And that type of confidence is something that everybody should have. Like as adult males, some adult males feel like oh my God, what if I get attacked? What if I get beat up? And that's probably a very bad pressure. But some males don't. Some like alpha figures that are not afraid. Like whether their confidence is delusional or not. Whether
like Dylan Dallas, or what was his name?
Dylan
Dallas, who just got choked. He just got choked out.
Super drunk at a bar, probably talking trash. Dylan's all a wild case. But it's like where I was going with that is some males may not experience that feeling of like feeling intimidating, feeling vulnerable, feeling and that's something that people shouldn't have to deal with. But most women do, because flat out, whether you like it or not, men and women are different, and males are usually much more physically intense. They're more like, just on a biological level, like we are more like grab and smash. A silverback gorilla doesn't fight with a female gorilla. It will win. Like we're built different, right? So as a woman, they have to live in this state of like there's an imbalance of power. You know what I mean? Like in pure physicality, generally speaking, males are much more dominant. So a female knowing that like I actually have the ability through the training that I've done to try to defend myself if one of these people were to attack me, that is so huge. And I'm not trying to say anyone that says like, oh, if you just take some jiu-jitsu classes, it'll save your life. Maybe. maybe.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I saw, I follow Hunter Gracie and his wife and him do a class, and they kind of show like, hey, if you're in a vehicle and you're in a truck and the guy jumps on top of you, what do you do? But one of the videos he shows was in, I think, New York City, where a car sideswiped another guy, and the guy jumps out of the car and he runs up, and it's a an older father, probably the son's probably mid-30s, and the guy gets out and demands $1,000. Like, give me $1,000 now. You just hit my car. And then who carries around $1,000? Some people, but not those guys that day. And so he just goes ballistic and starts throttling him and beats the hell out of the guy, beats the hell out of the dad. And Henner brings the son on, and it's like, hey, we want to gift you some tuition to one of our academies so you can learn some jiu-jitsu basics to protect yourself. And the guy says, well, I was just so ashamed. I'm just so ashamed. Like, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't stop that man from beating my father. And he was like, Henner tells him, like, you shouldn't be ashamed. The act of violence, that man should be ashamed for letting his anger escalate to that. Like, that's what you should be ashamed of. But so as I'm leaving after watching that, I got my kids in the back. I stop at the end of our sub, and I'm like, Zeke, Diem, I need you to focus today, because not today, but maybe in 10, 20 years, Daddy's going to be in a situation, and what you're learning today will save Daddy's life. Probability slim, but still a probability. Somebody starts hammering on me and my kids are there, they could save me with their BJJ. Just one of the things we practice all the time in the house is back mount, hooks in, RNC, bang bang bang. Like, that's the go-to for the mods, and I'm like, just do that. That's all you just learn that.
With most human beings that aren't trained, all you have to do is get a hold of their neck. Yeah. People panic. They treat the neck as such a primitive thing. The first time you see an adult get strangled against their will, it is a very psychological experience. So most people that have never experienced this, if any jiu-jitsu practitioner grabs your neck for the first time, you're going to think you're going to die. You will literally be like, oh my God, because it's such an overwhelming experience, but they train to do it every day under full resistance against people that know how to defend it, and they get extremely proficient at, regardless of your defense, we're going to strangle you. So it's like your children are going to carry around those tools that the first time this man goes to attack Diem, and he thinks like, I'm bigger, stronger, I attack her, and she wraps his neck, and then she puts him to sleep.
I pray for that man. My son Zeke, he scares me in here at times. Like, there'll be a kid twice his size, having a key lock on him, about to rip his arm, and I'm sitting there and I'm yelling, tap, tap. And I'm telling him, like, you got to tap. He's going to rip your arm off, son. And he's like, didn't hurt. Won't do it. And I see him getting choked. I'm like, end it, tap. And he's just like, no, it didn't choke me.
The fear goes away. If you watch our children, I was just saying that the other day, they're literally practicing five different triangles on each other, squeezing as hard as they could in the advanced class. And the kids' facial expressions don't even change. They go like, yep, you got it. Like, they tap like, oh, yep, I would have gone to sleep right there. And then the person's strangling it. Yep, you would have put me to sleep right there. There's no emotional response. So during that, what to most people would be this crazy, overwhelming, emotional situation, these kids are like, oh, it's problem solved. Get this off my neck. I'm turning blue, but I'm still conscious. I'm out of that now, and now I'm going to get you. The psychological process of that is just huge.
I love watching, especially Josh. He's another kid in the academy that I just thoroughly enjoy because he's always so calm. He's so calm, and he's such a good kid who's encouraging and builds people up, and he could go out there and smash people, and I've seen him do it. I've gone to tournaments and watched Josh just smash and win.
Last tournament was amazing.
He's a savage if he wants to be, but he's just so kind. But he's getting choked out, and he's just like, all right, I'm just gonna cinch over, and he just does his thing, and I thoroughly enjoy watching Josh. There's so many great kids in the academy, and it's just like I love watching. I love being a part of it. It's I don't
want to go too far on this tangent, but I want to say one thing to viewers at home, because if you listen this far in the podcast, we're obviously influential enough that you care about what we say. And as a martial arts instructor, one of the biggest things I want to tell people is you gotta stop falling for fucking gimmicks. You gotta stop, if you go to a self-defense seminar, whether it's a day or a week or even a month, and someone tells you at the end, now you can defend yourself, they are blatantly lying to you. You, for as much training as you do, you give yourself a certain probability to survive the experience based on how bad the experience is. Just like if you did anything else, if you were practicing to be a surgeon and you take a one-day course, you are not going to be a proficient surgeon. It takes time. And what brings me to this is there was a yoga studio in Brighton that offered a self-defense clinic for all women when all this stuff was going on. They did a self-defense, which is a great thing. I was like, man, I do free women's self-defense seminars, but I train professional athletes, so I look at it with a fine lens. And on their flyer, it literally was saying that at the end of the course, you would be certified in any self-defense situation. You're telling me you are promoting to these people that don't know that with you come to this class for 3 hours and you learn some, like, when they go to strike, you block like this, do this, knee them like that. You're literally lying to people and you're making them more likely to become seriously injured. You know what I mean? And like, there's a lot of instructors out there that teach bullshit, and they'll fire people up, and they'll never once even have a struggling human interaction. They all like learn like choreographed stuff. You know what I mean? Listen, it's like I can send a high school wrestler into your karate school. He will double leg your instructor and beat him to death on the ground, and there's nothing your instructor can do about it. You know, unless he's developed these grappling abilities or just in general spent a lifetime training across a wide variety of martial arts. So one of the lead into this, I get emails and stuff from people. They're like, hey, sending my daughter off to college. She leaves in 2 weeks. I want her to have self-defense. I'm like not enough of a businessman. I can't just be, I cannot willingly be like, okay, I'll just train your daughter 6 times. And whenever a man decides to attack her, she'll be safe. We have to change this thinking because.
But you could water that. You could water that. Sorry to interrupt you, but you could bring them in and then pique their interest and say, "Hey, you need to continue this. Will be the greatest gift in your life outside of Jesus." I never
say no. I literally go. I bring them in, and then the funny thing is, they always want to learn like what they would see in the movies. Like, wait, well, how do I hit something? And like, well, how do I?
Seagal.
If I just grab them, how do I just like break them? And I'm like, oh my God. Like, the best chance you have is to have an idea of how to defend yourself on the feet, how to hit something if you need to, how to get something off you if you need to. If you end up on the ground, how to end up on top and how to attack the neck. But these are processes, and you know what I mean? And I try to send everyone off with because I've had that happen multiple times. And I try to I teach them, I start with a little bit of boxing, like how to hit something, a little bit of kickboxing, but then I go right into grappling arts. And the first time I grab a hold of one of these people, you can tell they've never been grabbed before. Like, I'll grab them around the back. They realize the helplessness, and they're like, oh my God, like, there's nothing I could do. And it's like, you're right, there's nothing you could do. But that vulnerability will exist until it doesn't, until you train to the point where that vulnerability has gotten less and less and less and less and less. And most people carry an inflated sense of how they would do in a fight, like especially usually powerful people or like leaders or people that are like, they have a very inflated sense of how they will do in a combat situation until it happens and they go like, holy fuck, I'm vulnerable. But the problem is, you are that vulnerable, whether you want to accept it or not, until you change it. So it's like we have to change the conversation with people, realizing like if you don't train, you're not less likely, or it's not like you're less likely to be attacked. You are the same level to be attacked by, like, whether you're going to get that encounter or not. You are just horribly unprepared. And if you want to live in the illusion, like, hopefully it never happens to me, that's fine. But you are horribly unprepared for when the situation comes. And like that guy witnessed with his father and went, there was nothing I could do as this man beat down me and my father. You don't want to get there and then realize I should have had the tools. And we're talking about, that's simple. That's taking an ass whooping. That sucks.
Right.
You'll heal up. You'll be fine. What if it's sexual assault to a woman?
And the damage that creates over the lifetime. And that challenges that they'll have in relationships.
You have a daughter.
3.
If I had a daughter in this world, I would literally be training them to be the most lethal killing machines ever, while hoping that they weren't so far off on one end that they couldn't interact with society, because that stuff terrifies me to a level because that is permanent damage. That is permanently altering their brain for the way that they interact with people in the future. That's, you know what I mean? But like, we have a society of people that are not being given the tools, first of all, to even see the red flags coming, and then have the tools if they're attacked to do it. So as an instructor, it feels very helpless. And then you get people that are like, yo, make my daughter safe in college. And I'm just like, yo, I can't. I literally cannot. I can just tell you what I want her to do to continue having a chance to defend herself.
Prepare for the worst and pray for the best. And that's another thing I love about this academy is that my son, will do kids boxing, hitting the bag, and JLC does a great job, and so does the team. Tabitha and the rest of the team out here does a great job of training the kids on how to throw a jab and a hook. But then on Fridays, we got the blessing of Gary and Andrew teaching wrestling. It's awesome. So Zeke can learn to do a single leg, a double leg, fireman, all sorts of great. And he's like, Dad, wrestling's way harder than jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's like JoJo. He's a wrestler, and that's how he started. His mom was like, I'm gonna bring JoJo in here to help him with his wrestling. And JoJo's awesome. I love JoJo too. He's got a great personality. He's a kid that does the jiu-jitsu here, and it's such a blessing to see them grow and get better and advance, but also have the humility to help each other. Like, it's amazing because kids have good hearts, and some kids have a rough background, and they come in with an axe to grind and get out some aggression. And I tell my kids, like, this is the place. Don't hit each other in the house. Come out here and choke Zeke. Come out here and choke DM. Like, this is the spot to get that aggression out. Like, I always tell them, I said, I love you. Listen to your coaches, smile at your friends, and be kind. And it's kind of counterintuitive because how am I kind, Dad, if I'm choking somebody? It's like, but that's what we're here to do. We're here to choke people and rip their arms off and take their ankle out.
And you've seen the advanced kids. I'm telling you what, any of these kids that are training substantially, you grab any of the advanced little girls from here and they get attacked by a boy anywhere close to their age, anywhere close to their size. This poor child, this boy, I'm going to have to write an apology letter to that boy's family about how badly she is going to humiliate them. Like, if you grabbed Lexi and some little boy her age tried to grab her down and attack her, the ass whooping that kid would catch, and not even just the beat, how horribly he would be humiliated is actually a great feeling for, like, you prepare your children to have those skills and now make them good kids. Because Lexi and all those, like, the advanced kids could be terrors. They could go around and just absolutely abuse people physically, and they might not be able to do much in response. But if we build good characters that also have, it's the same idea with, like, carrying a gun. Like, a good person with a gun is a great thing.
Absolutely.
A horrible person with a gun is a terrible thing.
Right.
The jiu-jitsu is the gun.
Amen.
You have it all times. Like, and my dad is a big gun person. A lot of other people are, and I'm a very big supporter of the Second Amendment. I think that guns are very important because it's already a tool. It exists. Like, if it was a hypothetical idea in someone's head that was like, hey, we should invent a machine that if we pull our finger, we can take someone's life, I'd be like, you know what? The world probably doesn't need that. But once it exists, it exists. It's a tool now. It's just a tool, right? And in good hands, it's a great tool. In a bad hands, it's bad. But where I'm going with that is I've had a lot of people over the years that won't train jiu-jitsu because they're like, I have a gun. And I'm like, where's your gun? Like, oh, it's in my car. I'm like, all right, make it to your car.
Yeah, right.
I'll get a hold of you before you get to your car. You know what I mean? So it's like you always will have your body. Jiu-jitsu is here and here.
And I think about Teresa when she did the belly down arm bar on a guy and just like smoked that kid. I was like frightened for his elbow and his future health because when she got it, she like leaned into that belly down arm bar, and it's like that girl, and she's so intense. She is so competitive.
She put a choke on Brian Fornicero, one of my black belts last night. She was just learning her ninja choke from front sprawl, and it was so tight when she did it to me. I'm like, go show that to Coach Brian. And I'm like, Brian, let her show you her ninja choke. She learned it 2 days ago. She rips it in, seals it in, fully sprawls on him, squeezes. Brian taps. He's like, oh, nice job. Looks at me. He's like, dude, she would have legitimately had me sleep. He's like, I can't believe how tight that was. This is, for the people listening at home, this is like a 70-pound child.
Yeah.
That, like, she knows how to wrap your neck off, and if you don't know how to stop this lock before it takes place, she will put you to sleep, full-grown adult.
But on the flip side of that, when I watch her roll with Zeke, she's such a great teacher. She's so kind, and she walks him through that, and she's so gentle, and she's a great teacher as well. So there's the competitive side, and I asked her mom, like, who's the most competitive? She said, oh, Teresa, by far. It was like I saw her older brother Chris post online something about how, one of the sisters, practices violin and Teresa practices violence.
That is awesome.
I was like, that's so true. She's and it's fun. It's fun being a parent. And I think when I initially had my girls, I was kind of loathing my future, thinking, oh man, I remember being in high school and going to girls' soccer games, not super entertaining. And I thought my life was going to be one of, ballet dances, which is great, girls' soccer, which is great. But it wasn't something I was excited about. But I come in here and I see the girls that just dominate. Like the boys don't even want to go against these girls. They're like, nah, Harlow, no thanks. I'm gonna pass.
We actually had a problem for a while where we couldn't keep male students in the class because we had this little clique of girls like Harlow, Aubrey, Lexi, and they got very good because they were training consistently and they were really loving it. That whenever boys would sign up, the girls would literally crush them to the point where the boys wouldn't have any victories at all. The girls would strangle them every match, and we even had some of the parents being like, I don't like that. I don't like that my son is getting destroyed by these girls. And it's like, you know what? That vulnerability is going to exist whether you keep your son here or not. So go ahead, let your son leave. Let these girls train another 2 years, and it'll be 10 times worse. They will play with your son like he's a little toy and then submit him whenever they want. You know what I mean? Like, you have to accept it, and it should be empowering.
Absolutely.
You should be like, take inspiration from that. Look at Teresa and be like, oh my God, my son needs to know how to do that.
Like, I think of Hunter. He's a big kid. He came in here and like he's on Savage Row going back to back to back against them, and I was just like, oh man. And he's he had what, one-on-ones for a year plus,
almost
with
he
Danny
trained for like 2 years with Danny, private lessons. Hunter is a savage,
and they're hanging with him. And he's much bigger than that.
Much bigger, much more physical, a little bit older.
Yeah, I mean, there was one time where he almost ripped Teresa's arm off, and you stopped him, and I know she was upset about that. And
she was like, "I didn't tap yet. I could have got out." I'm like,
because he was gonna take your arm home. So thankfully you were there to stop that. But man, it's so fun. It's so fun watching these kids develop, and you're such a great coach to them, and you're so encouraging to them, and just the confidence that they get and the way that they're going to impact the world in the future. I hope that more people are able to get their children into jiu-jitsu because of the life lessons that it teaches. I hope that more people are able to open up jiu-jitsu gyms across the nation because, I mean, there's a family in Kentucky. I can't think of the guy with 2 daughters. Kenny, like he was sitting next to me before jiu-jitsu one day. I come in early because I want to get a good seat, and Kenny's like, "Oh, I remember when my daughters were that small. It goes fast. And he's like, "You're so blessed to have a place like this." I was like, I agree, blessed in abundance. So when I say that I'm blessed in abundance, it's because of places like this and communities like this and parents that care enough. And it's just I can't say enough wonderful things about what you're doing. I'm so grateful for you, James, and the whole team, and just everything that happens around here. That's great for the kids. And I'm optimistic about the future. I believe that I'm a fallen man in the fallen world, and things will continuously get worse until Jesus comes back. But ultimately, I'm optimistic that what's being done here will be the light. It will be the salt of the world, and that ultimately it's going to be a great future. And JLC talks about all the time. He's like, these kids are going to be savages.
You said at the beginning of this podcast, right before we wrap this up, you wanted to talk about Jesus, you wanted to talk about Jocko, and you wanted to talk about jiu-jitsu. And I feel like we have accomplished it, brother. And like I said, if you listen to this podcast, if you are looking for something to change your life, like truly, you're struggling with your mind, you're struggling with anxiety, you're struggling with relationships, you're struggling with anything, you need to try jiu-jitsu or the martial arts in general. You need to put yourself in a world where you are battling fight or flight, and you are pushing yourself, and you're making those endorphins hit your brain, and you're feeling the physicality that you can bring out, and you're being a human being living with energy and emotion. And those things will pay dividends that you cannot even imagine yet. The person that you are 6 months into jiu-jitsu will look back and be like, wow, I can't believe I was the person that I was before it. It's the reason it's so addictive and so many people stay with it is because jiu-jitsu is more of a mind thing than anything else. Like, the arm bars are cool, the physicality is cool, throwing a flying triangle is awesome, but really what happens internally is the magic in jiu-jitsu, and that's what everybody talks about. So, Greg, we have gone over 2 hours. We're approaching like the Irishman film length here, effortlessly, man. 2 hours and 10 minutes of just quality dialogue between 2 gentlemen, that are sharing this experience.
In My Steady Mind, I want to give another shout out to Dr. Seth Hickerson. Check out mysteadymind.com. I think that he's got an amazing program that can impact your lives and help you stop those negative thoughts. And for veterans out there, that don't have the benefits that they deserve, connect with Vet Life. There's just so many resources out there. But talking about the ego and the pride, like, men don't generally ask for help. I'm never going to ask for directions. Don't need to anymore. I got a GPS, but we don't ask for help. And I think it's manly to ask for help, because if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm thankful that you invited me onto this podcast. And I think that Jesus, Jocko, and jiu-jitsu are some great J's.
There we go. So final thing I want you to do is you can look it in the camera. Someone watch this podcast. They want to support you. They want to maybe hire your business. They know somebody that they think that the leadership that you bring to the table would be influential for their company. How do people reach you? How do they get in touch with you? Do you have a website? Just anything that you'd like to shout out or how they follow you and your story. You can just shout it out in the camera, or to me, it doesn't matter. And then we'll wrap this thing up.
I think the best thing that people could do is to follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn. I respond to everybody personally. It's not just if somebody invites me, I say, thank you so much for the invitation into your professional network. That's kind of where I have the majority of my business. Also, penultimatepeopleconsulting.com. I have a YouTube channel as well, Penultimate People Consulting. But, for the most part, I'm just a dude who loves Jesus, loves his wife, loves his kids, and am blessed in abundance and grateful to be here. And, you should join the gym and start rolling.
There we go. And hey, you know what? If Greg starts rolling 6 months into his jiu-jitsu journey, remember this, clip this, 6 months into his jiu-jitsu journey, I'm going to bring him back into this podcast. We're going to sit down and talk, and I guarantee you're going to see why we're all addicted to jiu-jitsu. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I loved it. We have weigh-ins tonight for Taylor Moore is the pro main event tomorrow night at the Motor City Casino in Detroit. Jackson Barlow makes his MMA debut, and Johanna Dixon steps in this ring for the second time, looking to remain undefeated. So it's going to be a stellar weekend. This was a stellar podcast, and thank you, Greg, for joining me, and we'll wrap this thing up.
Thank you, and God bless you, everyone.